Good afternoon. Would you like to get started, please? Welcome to the July 30th School Board Work Session. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Just a couple of very quick announcements. Ms. Fields will not be able to join us for the work session or the school board meeting this evening. In addition to that, we've got a full agenda, and I know the superintendent has indicated that she's asked her staff to be as succinct and brief as possible. And so I'm going to ask the board members also, because we have a lot of work to do on the board members' part of the agenda, to be as, certainly if you have questions, we want to make sure those questions are answered, but to the extent that perhaps we can get answers from, outside the work session, if you would consider that, we'd appreciate it. That will help us get through it quicker and be able to address the items we have on the school board part of the work session this afternoon. So with that, Madam Superintendent.
Oh, sorry. The first item we have before you today is Wendy Dodge with our policy updates. And Wendy will come forward.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I know this is your favorite part of work session, so I'm just going to get right to it.
Of course, because you're the one that presents.
So the policies that we have today from Neola, most of them are related to investigations, either of students or employees, and are a result of changes that the U.S. DOE Office of Civil Rights has made and sent out to districts saying this is what we expect you to retain in terms of investigations. So the majority of the policies are related to that. The rest of them are changes as required by statute, like the CDL license holders. And 5120 is a clarification. Yes, sir?
Mr. Townsend?
So there's a list of what we retain that's repeated in multiple of these. So my question and then comment and position applies to all of them. The ones that are scratched through, the written witness statements, the narrative, the all documentary evidence, emails, text, etc. We are not required to withhold those, right? That
To
is
retain those as part of our investigation, that's correct.
What I'm saying is it is not illegal to retain them. That is a discretion that we would be exercising.
That's correct.
Okay, I am not going to support not retaining 5, 6, 7, and 8 on all of those. That's what we're doing now, right?
Right, so just for clarification, some of the policies are student policies, and in those policies, they were directed by Dr. Steinke, and her staff requested not keeping any of those. The rest of them are HR policies related to employees, and the HR policies, they did ask to retain written witness statements, and all documentary evidence. So only 2 of those 4 were scratched out on the employee ones, and the rest of them were on student-related policies. There's a lot of policies in here, and we have different sections. We repeat these policies based on different employee sections. Does that clarify or make it worse?
Let me rephrase. What are we? Are we currently keeping all of this stuff now?
I don't know for sure. I think
I don't think HR does.
Anything that we collect, we keep. But the way we kind of reviewed this was, we'll keep what's definitely, collect and keep what's definitely required, but we're not gonna go out and ask for things that aren't required. Now, if they happen to come in as a part of it, we'll of course keep it. We're not gonna discard anything. But some of these things aren't necessarily always available. So we're not gonna go and ask for something to be created that's not necessary. If that makes, I don't know if that makes sense. Yes.
I didn't, on the student side of this, that's not how I read it. That I understood it that we weren't going to keep things that we were already collecting.
Correct.
We always keep what we collect. Yeah, we definitely keep that.
So you're not
You're not
Okay,
purchasing.
look,
Not looking for additional information, to go out and get additional information. Am I saying that correctly, Kimberly?
That's the way we interpreted it.
the way this reads to me, if you interview a witness in any of these cases and you transcribe the interview, instead of keeping that, we're gonna get rid of that. That's pretty plainly how it reads to me, unless I'm just wrong.
So it reads that way in the student policies, but not in the employee policies.
Why,
So a student numbered policy is 5517 or 2260. Those are student sections of our policies, the 2000s and the 5000s. The 1000s, 3000s, and 4000s are employee sections, and so those pertain to employee investigations, and all of those say that we'll retain statements and, hold on, I'll bring up the other one.
are we not retaining students because they're aging out, like, you're figuring they're aging out or aging on?
Maybe I misread it and misinterpreted it, honestly. I know that if we collected something, if we got a witness
Keep it,
statement, we would keep it. We're not gonna discard it.
That's not how that reads.
Okay, then maybe I misinterpreted it.
That's on the student side.
On this, right. I wouldn't respond on anything I might.
I guess my priority is retention of evidence that is relevant to an investigation. So that board members can access it if they have to, or whatever the process may be of it. Like, a lot of times that helps determine the quality of an investigation as well, if you could compare what the statement was to what the investigation is. That's what my priority is here. However that gets expressed in the policy is fine. I mean, maybe there needs to be some more discussion on it. I don't know.
When do we need to go back and?
Yeah, we can, before this goes before the board for a final vote, we can certainly modify that. So you want to keep witness statements in all of the policies regardless of whether they're employee or student? Is that what I'm
I
hearing?
mean, I'm open on the student side to not keeping things if there's a really compelling reason for them, but I want to hear what the compelling reason is. I mean, on the employee side, I would prefer that we 5, 6, 7, 8 just stand unredacted.
I'm looking at, like, number 5 says written witness statements, whereas number 1 says all written reports, allegations, complaints, or statements. So how is number 5 different than number 1? And I'm on page 8 of 47 of the PDF.
Because it's specific to witnesses is how I read it. I mean, I think that's a legitimate point. I mean, but I read it as being specific to witness accounts.
We're not opposed to keeping things, obviously, that we collect. I just didn't want it to appear that we were gonna, if you're doing an investigation and you have everything you need to make some informed decisions or whatever on your next steps on it, there's no reason to have to go out and collect additional pieces of evidence just because.
Right, I don't see that.
Maybe it's just the interpretation that's.
Yeah, I mean.
We can go back and discuss it one day if that would help
And
clarify.
if you'd like to include me on the meeting notice for that.
Oh, now we're having a meeting?
Well,
Discussion.
whatever you would like to call it.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll come back with something,
And
so.
it might be helpful to say how this actually changes your real world experience. Like how adopting what you would do would be different from what we're doing now. Like that would be, I mean, from my point of view.
Okay.
So are you looking at both of those policies? Or just the student side?
I think we're just looking at the student side unless you wanted,
Well, I mean, on the employee side, my instinct is to keep it all, not scratch out anything.
okay, so that would include narratives and notes from audio or visual,
Right.
digital, which I don't think we do any audio,
No.
visual,
No.
digital. We
Okay.
don't do anything
We do
of
not.
that, which is why it was scratched out.
Right.
And then email, text, or social media posts pertaining to the investigation.
So usually if we do have anything, and if it is relevant, that is already a part of or included in the investigative report. So let's say I'm investigating Wendy, and just because you're sitting up there, Wendy, and so in investigating Wendy, and I needed some text messages from Dr. Steinke and from Dr. Akes, and they pertain to the actual investigation, I will include those as a part of the report already, because they're referenced in the report. So things that are, I guess, referenced will be kept, it's just the extraneous material that will not be kept.
That could be Ms. Reynolds, then Ms. Miller.
For the employee one, I had read it as my understanding of it when I was reading through was that when all documentary evidence included the others, because they're all documents. So I just thought it was the 5, 6, and 8 were being taken out because number 7 really includes 5, 6, and 8. So that was that's what I thought the changes were for.
So if we keep 5 and 7 on both employees and student policies, which is written statements and documentary evidence, would that, that way they would be the same throughout our policies, and I think they would clarify it for everybody.
If you define what documentary evidence is, like defined as, da-da-da. Yeah, I mean, that's.
That's documentary.
Yeah.
That's number 8.
Right, I mean, so I think what 7, comma, defined as emails, text, social, but they're, but they're written, so I don't think we're gonna wordsmith it here,
No.
I mean, like, right,
We'll
but.
work on it. We'll work on it and bring something back to you.
Ms. Miller?
I just want to make, what Tedra just reviewed might be, I would consider, could be subjective sometimes, so I think adding them, if it's the same across, then it might be better for the record keeping if they have to go back to it. So,
Back to the definition.
yeah, because if we're going to decide what goes into the investigation, or I think it should be kept, what you guys just discussed, but we should keep it all instead of being subjective of what goes in and then getting rid of everything else.
Any other questions on
Just-
any other policies?
I mean, from my point of view, it might be helpful once you decide on the new language prior to a board meeting, give me a call and run it by me, see if I'm good with it. I'm just one of 7, but if you wanted to run that by me ahead of time, I'd be happy to, discuss it.
Okay.
Once you do, we just make sure everybody gets it,
Right,
so everybody
right,
is aware.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
The next item that's coming before you is Mr. Perone is actually going to join Ms. Porteous with the staffing plan and org charts, organizational chart at this time.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You'll notice that in this year's staffing plan and district org charts, you'll see a number of additions. Essentially, we are funding the chief of staff to provide the superintendent with some additional assistance and some other additional reporting changes, et cetera. One of the things that we are trying to do is really bring our district in line with other top 10 Florida districts. We have really maintained a low kind of administrative staff, and so in looking across the state in terms of other districts and how they're structured, in order to provide the same quality and level of services, we knew that we needed to increase some of our administrative positions. So as a result, we are bringing that to the staff. That is really the main position that we're bringing. Overall, in terms of costs, if you look at the cost summary sheet, which is behind the executive summary,
Tabs on Tab 2.
yep, thank you.
Tab 3.
Tab 3,
Tab 3.
After the
Are you
pink,
behind Tab 2?
tab 3, there's after a pink
Are you
divider.
Keep going. Keep going. That's fine. Keep going. That's where you go.
overall cost,
Yeah.
I have a question.
okay,
Under, are we going by tabs,
I was looking at just the
financial?
financials.
Okay, but just quickly, I noticed the substantiatives changes to staffing is the chief of staff. Can you tell me a little bit about what that person will be doing?
Sure, the chief.
Or is that coming later?
There is a job description contained therein.
Okay,
However,
didn't see
I
it.
can talk to you more about it as well.
Just quickly.
Okay, the chief of staff will direct or be they're now essentially two deputies if you think about it that way.
Yes.
So, Mr. Hill will be the deputy of academics, the chief of staff will be the deputy over business services essentially. So human resources, facilities, IT, and, finance, yes, budgeting. So the house will now be broken into two parts. Academics is one lane, and that
Bet.
will report directly to Mr. Hill.
Okay,
And then the chief of staff will supervise the assistant superintendent of IT, the assistant superintendent of facilities, the associate of HR, and then the associate of financial services.
So if I might add, it's more your operational, remember, and it used to
Right.
look like
just
that.
chief of staff sounds weird, that's why I was like, okay.
Could
So
I?
that position is actually, I'm sorry, just to
Go
address
ahead,
your
yeah.
weirdness, that position is actually across the district, across other districts.
Is it really?
Yeah.
It's called the chief of staff. yes.
And so what will his position be called?
Her.
Him.
Mr. Hill.
It's Mr. Hill, he already said it. Right? Didn't you say? She
He's
pointed.
still the deputy.
He's still the
deputy.
deputy superintendent of schools.
So it'll be deputy superintendent,
Superintendent,
okay?
and
Yeah.
then deputy superintendent,
Yep.
and then chief of staff.
Chief of staff.
So they're like brother,
Got
they're
it.
siblings.
Okay. Got it.
That's the best way to describe it.
Okay.
Mr. Wilson?
So I like this idea. I've long argued and talked to the superintendent about a chief operating officer, somebody that would head up the business side of the district. It's a huge undertaking. It's a huge part of what we do, and it's not to suggest that Mr. Perone is not capable. It's just that the CFO is so focused on the financial aspects of the business that having someone to focus on operations and efficiencies and effectiveness I think is critical. And I've been a proponent of this for a long time. But I'm with Ms. Cunningham. I think it is incredibly awkward to call them a chief of staff and then not have them oversee the staff.
I agree.
I
mean,
would.
if you said chief operating officer, which is what he said, that totally aligns in my head. Operations,
Yeah.
and academics, but
I,
It's okay, whatever.
I like that title better because I
Me too.
think chief of staff is incredibly confusing.
yeah.
It infers something more than it is, I think.
You what now?
Okay. Ms. Fortney, then Mr. Townsend.
You said there was a job description, because Tedra, I appreciate all this work. I mean, I've read every word, just to let you know, okay?
Thank you.
And the vetting, where you redid stuff is very, very good. But I did not see a job description of that. Can you
It's the first one under tab 7.
Good job.
tabs? Well, I didn't have tabs.
I appreciate
I
that.
had to print, it. Well, I didn't have to print it, Susan.
Do you want me to provide it to you? I have it right here.
Okay, I got it right here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good.
Right, yeah, I did.
Thank you.
I didn't even see this until I started reading, and anyways, it's beside the point. I agree, but, we are in tough financial times. Maybe this is not quite the opportune time to do whatever we want to call it, chief of staff or whatever. That's just my feeling, because, we're not going to probably be able to give our employees any kind of substantial raise or keep their insurance on the line, and I don't know how that helps the folks in the classroom. If you could address that for me there.
Well, last year we were actually thinking about bringing it, and Mrs. Berg pulled the position because last year was I don't want to say tougher financial year, but the outlook was probably the same or even,
Lean?
it was very lean, thank you.
Gotcha.
Yes, it was very lean. And so as a result, Mrs. Berg pulled that position at that time. I can say that, to be frank, even though we are at the district level, everything that we does impacts students. And everything that we does impacts the classroom. And so to have someone in that position where Mrs. Bird is a busy woman, and so
I
right
know,
now.
I'm with her all the time.
And right now, unfortunately, sometimes we have to wait on things because she may not be available. And so Mr. Hill has been in the position for a year. And although he's done a wonderful job of assimilating to the district office, we need somebody that we can directly report to, that we can make really prompt decisions with, that will have a direct impact on the schools.
I
at the
get
school
that.
level.
I just feel like, you know, it's the optics of that, and then no any kind of substantial raise or adding to our health insurance cost and all that stuff just makes for, because I think you had 27 pages that I read of every person who's either retired or left the district on an Excel sheet that was in really tiny print. And it's just another reason for them to leave. Does that make sense?
Well, to put it in context, the chief of staff would likely make about $135,000. I budget about $60,000 per teacher. So it's about 2 teaching positions.
Gotcha.
That's how big the position is. It's not necessarily that they're going to make, hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's a big job, but I can say it's equivalent to about 2 teaching positions, for context.
Well, I just wanted to express the optics on it.
Certainly.
And that was it.
Mr. Townsend, then Ms. Reynolds.
Okay, couple things. I may have to come back to this, but, so I do have the job description, and it does read like an actual chief of staff, the job description does, and it doesn't really read like what you described. The first line is help foster a culture of high standards, accountability, commitment, and urgency within the district. Provide direct support to the superintendent, the board on behalf of the superintendent, and provide coordination of district-wide endeavors. Serve as liaison and advise the superintendent and school board on matters relating to the local legislative liaison function, communications, and other departments. And it goes on for a while, and facilitate the resolution of parental, community, and school concerns. Let me say, I really support this job, what's in the job description. What it reads to me is a chief of stakeholder management, which is what we desperately need in this district. And I absolutely support that idea. I just am a little concerned because what you described, like splitting them in, the splitting in 2 is not anywhere on this as near as I can tell. I think the chief of staff position here is very much like the chief of staff position for the president of the United States. They're handling access, managing important stakeholders, managing Congress, which is us, the board. To answer Sarah's point about the optics, I agree, except that another reason why people leave, and they leave districts as a whole, is the operating environment as a whole. I'm willing to support this for the same reason that I'm willing to support the cultural consultant that we hired, and I would expect this person to work very closely with Emily Rogers. This to me is an investment in the function of the organization to make it much more responsive to its elected representatives, much more responsive to the public through focus and time and all of that kind of thing. Its success will depend entirely on how that stakeholder management feels next year. Let me give you an example of bad stakeholder management. Whoever has responsibility for the bonus plan that was emailed out, whether that's the state or us, whatever, I would hope that a chief of staff would have had a one-on-one meeting with every one of us on the board to brief us on why this is being structured this way, when it's going out, to equip us with talking points to address the public with, not just send it out on a Sunday morning and have your key interface with the public take all the bounce back from it and go, I don't know. I know that I had asked what the structure of the bonus program was gonna be. I knew there was one coming, but, you know, the best and brightest had changed. You know, those are the kind of things that I think the chief of staff can really help with. But this is a stakeholder management job. That's how the job description reads. That's what I'm willing to support. And if the stakeholder management doesn't change, I mean, it's going to be very dependent on who you hire.
Absolutely.
And it needs to be someone who's comfortable with transparency, someone who's comfortable with engaging us, who's responsive to us. In fact, I think there's a really good model for this from another agency. Scott Wilder at the sheriff's office is just the quintessential chief of staff. I don't know that that's his title, but that's what he does. And I would urge you to add him to the interview team, and I would urge you to add us to the interview team. And this position has the potential to really transform this district for the better, but it also has the potential to just be another layer, and a way to consolidate power and be a gap between the public and the state stakeholders and who has power. It's all going to be in the execution, and I can tell you a year from now, if it's the latter, I will not support continuing it. So I guess that's my point of view, and I was going to say all of that anyway, but I'm perplexed in how it matches up with what you said. Like that seems to differentiate.
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
May I? So the last line of that, the chief of staff shall, on the first page 1 of 3, serve as liaison and advise the superintendent and the school board on matters relating to local legislative liaison function, communications, and keywords, other departments and functions as determined by the superintendent. So personnel is the superintendent's pursuant to statute. And as a result, if you look on tab 5, page 1, which is chart 1, it will show exactly who shall report to the chief of staff, who Mrs. Bird has determined will report to the chief of staff, because that function, that position, solely reports to her, and then it is determined who reports, who that person supervised is up to Mrs. Bird as well. So if she decides to change that, let's say tomorrow, and let's say if she puts Dr. Aikes in the academic office over there, then that's why that language is in the job description that way. That is determined by the superintendent.
Ms. Reynolds, then Ms. Miller.
I think, Ms. Fortney, I'm very conscious of everything you spoke about and the perception, but I also, in speaking with the superintendent recently, she keeps telling me her goal this year is to not be in her office. She wants to be in schools, helping our teachers, affecting our students directly. And in the back of my mind, every time she says it, I'm like, how are you going to do that and still manage all of our business functions? But I think this is the answer to that, to be able to get her out in schools more. I also think, to your point, Billy, as far as stakeholder management, this position I would assume will be working very closely with Mr. Hill in stakeholder management, as opposed to him having to work with finance and HR and all of those different positions. I think that this is an incredible opportunity for our district to let Ms. Bird get out in schools a little bit more, as I know she's been itching to do, because that's where she really benefits us the most, I think, is when she's working directly with kids. But also to still be able to manage our business affairs at home, because we are one of the largest businesses in Polk County, if not the largest business in Polk County. So the fact that our business departments aren't reporting to somebody that's the head of operations is kind of a miracle that it works as well as it does to begin with.
Ms. Miller.
I want to go back to Mr. Wilson's point, because I think I had, as a newly elected board member, that was something I thought we already had in place, to have someone here. And I don't get it from the job functions that are currently listed, so I don't know if this can be amended to include that. This very much operates, as everyone's discussed here, another liaison to the community and to the staff. But if this person's over the business side of the district, we really need someone on not just the budgeting, because we have people doing that, but the overseeing of that. Because in the past, I've asked about, why don't we have a position, as other districts do, to review contracts and to talk about, vetting the best deals for things and not just continuing on the path we've been on for 20 years. And it was a position that was dropped, or we don't have it in the budget. Is this person going to be the person that is that involved in it to make sure we're looking for those dollars? We've not been able to do that with current staff, and I think just because we don't have enough in that department.
From what I understand, yes. You wanna talk?
So overall operations is dealing with the finance and the dollars as well. That's why that's more of an operations side of the house as well that they're gonna be dealing with. So yes, that will be looking at the dollars that they're dealing with, looking at how they best suit the need for the district. So to answer your question, yes, they will be doing it. That's your operations side of your house.
I would like to see some of that in this description of what their daily function would be. I would like to see more of that business angle of what they'll be overseeing. And not the details, of course, but a lot of this is the community liaison. I need someone involved, because Mr. Hill is, one person cannot oversee all of this. And I like the idea of breaking it up into two, but we're gonna generate money if we have someone there who is overseeing that and looking for those opportunities.
Mr. Wilson and Ms. Cunningham?
So there have been a lot of comments and thoughts a bit from the board about what the expectations are. I mean, probably in a perfect environment, you'd have a pure chief of staff who would do the kinds of things that Mr. Townsend was talking about. You would also have a chief academic officer who would handle the academic side of the business, and a COO who would handle the business side of the business, because it is, after all, $1.7 billion with the B budget. So I would offer that because we don't have those kinds of resources, we've got to find a way to meet all those objectives. I'm just throwing in my 2 cents. I would hope that this position, and as a CPA, one of the things I did was work with organizations, did consulting work as it relates to process improvement and systems improvement, and a good systems person, a good process person could save many times over what they make what they're paid for this particular job. It would be, in a district this size, that would be incredibly easy to do. Finding improvements and efficiencies, and again, that's not a reflection of Mr. Pronin, the job he's doing as a CFO. His job has got to be completely focused on the financial side of the business, but it's typical for organizations to move in that direction. So, that's my 2 cents. I think we could say we could work on process improvement, do an awful lot of process improvement, and easily pay for this position that way. I also understand the things that the board members are saying, and it seems like there should be a way that we could work with all of those requests, and because they're all important parts of what we need to be doing here in the district, I think.
Ms. Cunningham?
Well, I had the same thought, having also done BPI, business process improvement, for about 10 years, one of my former firms. I would hope, well, first of all, I support it, regardless of what it's called, okay? Because I know I started off saying I thought it sounded kind of weird, but now that I better understand it, what I would like to see us to do would be to start off with the 2 functions, if you will, but I really do feel that we need to move maybe within the next year, because I believe if what that person is going to do as the chief of staff for this district, that alone is a position in itself, what you have outlined here. And then there's the academics, and then there's the operational side. It really should be 3 separate positions in order, in my opinion, to function most efficient. And I think that's what Mr. Wilson just got done explaining, but I firmly believe that as well. So I'm not sure that as we start off, if this gets approved and we move forward, that we look at in the next 6 months to a year as this person gets acclimated, because there's 2 different strengths that you're looking for. For that chief academic officer, I might pick a different individual than I would be for the operations side of the house. So now you're asking for somebody that blends both of those, which is probably out there, but I think ultimately Ms. Bird's gonna be able to see through time where that person's strengths truly lie. And perhaps within a year, I really think there should be 3. I mean, because just what's written here in that job description is phenomenal. And if that person could accomplish half to 3/4 of what's written here, we would see a major change in the culture in this district. So, but I do support it as it is. I understand, Ms. Fortney, how you feel, but I'm trying to look at it from a level of trying to move us forward and continue to be the best that we can. And to do that, sometimes you have to spend money to be able to make those changes. And I don't know if it's 100% new dollars, quite frankly, or whether we've been able to use some from other, I'm not sure financially where we're at, but I just think in order to move forward, I know sometimes you gotta spend the money, as I do in my own business, and sometimes you're like, oh dear, do I make that investment or don't I? And certainly that's a decision that they've sat down and talked about and met, but I would look forward to making it into 3 down the road. So thank you.
We have Ms. Fortney, then Ms. Reynolds.
Well, I get all that.
I know.
And I too, Ms. Reynolds, have talked to Superintendent Byrd, and I know she wants to be in the schools. And I just, you know, if we're dedicated to providing our employees, some of them even a livable type wage, it's these like 135,000 here and 150,000 here, and that all adds up. And you know, it's not that I would not support this. I just want to make it known, and again, the optics of it, you know, they're already not good sometimes with our relationships with our employees. So just to put that out on the table and at least talk about it.
Ms. Reynolds, then back to Mr. Wilson.
I just wanted to comment on the job description a little bit because I know there's been some conversation about that. I think from experience with the position that we added for the Winter Haven Community Liaison last year, that having a job description that was very similar to this and that it didn't define everything that they would do from 8 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock at night was helpful in the first year, because it allowed for that other perform other duties as assigned, and for once they get into the position to kind of see where they're going to be most valuable. That I think if we put too much definition in their job, that it then becomes where they can't do the things that when we get in there and realize, oh, I really need you to do this today, there's something in their job description that prevents them from doing that. So I would support fully leaving it how it is for this year, and then potentially having you bring it back next year once you've been there for a year and see how it needs to be adjusted in action.
Okay. Mr. Wilson, then back to Mr. Townsend.
Well, I find it terribly unfortunate that we're having this kind of conversation because the real issue has to do with funding, right? And it's unfortunate that we can't do the things we need to do here in our district and pay for the positions we need, and then simultaneously take care of our employees and provide for healthcare costs. So I'm going to say this again. I know I'm a broken record, but we just need to keep sending the message to our state legislators to stop the millage rate rollback. That would be worth, if we could go back, I think it was 20 years, maybe 10 years. I apologize, I've forgotten the date, but
2.1 mils in 20 years.
20, so that would be worth $80 million a year to our district, recurring. That's not a one-time shot. So I think, and I was somewhat encouraged to see Senator Stargell indicate that she didn't think that was a bad idea. So I think as a community, as a school district, as a county, we just need to continue to advocate for that, get us back to where we were originally, so that, and I think that would be what we really need to do to make these things happen. So it's really it's a revenue stream issue.
Mr. Townsend.
Just want to reiterate to respond to Ms. Reynolds a little. I like this job description. I don't wanna change this job description. What concerns me is that the position we seem to be talking about is actually an efficiency person for business purposes, not what this job description is. That's what I'm wrestling with right now, which is fine. But I think our number one problem, is stakeholder management. And I think you have a much more active board with active priorities now than you did 10 years ago. And managing us, integrating us, aligning priorities is an important function. I mean, we can pressure and express our priorities and have staff respond to them kind of in a push, kind of give, take kind of way. I'd like to see us get to the point where we're collaborating on that, where this chief of staff person is the conduit for, what are your priorities here and how does this align with something the superintendent's doing, and here's the superintendent's priorities and how does this align with something that's important to you. That doesn't happen now. I mean, there's not connective tissue between us and the superintendent. We're still getting stuff done because we express our priorities and you guys respond to them, but it could be more seamless, and that's what the fourth word in this job description is culture. The second line is all about support to the board on behalf of the superintendent. That's what I'm supportive of, and to the extent that. So let me ask you this: is the relationship with the board part of this person's portfolio, as in it is?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that helps. Okay, so this person will be responsive / available to us if we have to call them, et cetera.
Yes, it will be.
Okay, that's all. And the question of stakeholder management again, I think I just want to continue to emphasize that, because that is what I will be looking for from this position, and from you as well, John. I think you're pretty good at that, but since it's a split, not a kind of how I imagined it, like this. I think whoever ends up being in that position is going to have to collaborate really closely with you and communicate board if they're the nexus point for board priorities. That stuff has to get to the schools too, not just to the business side. Do you guys see what I'm saying?
And they're connected.
Okay, all right. That's all right. Okay.
Yes, they are connected. Okay. Ms. Miller?
I just want to go back to the job description, and I think what's been said multiple times. If we talk about someone who's over facilities and and looking at budgeting or looking at efficiency of the district, it is different than what's read here. So we're going to have to marry that in order for me to support the position, like Mrs. Cunningham was speaking of. It needs to be 3. If that's what this one person is going to be in charge of stakeholder management and community liaison and making that effort on the side of facilities. But when we described originally what we were planning for this second person, for Mr. Hill to be over the schools and academic base, and this other person would be over the facilities and operating, it doesn't read that here. And so I understand. I've sat on panels to hire for the city, and I understand job descriptions cannot be too detailed, but in order to do what we've described that we're looking for, we're gonna have to marry that somewhere in this.
So, Ms. Cunningham's point's well taken, and the one thing that we've been looking at, we are a big organization, the 7th largest. And we have to look at how the other large organizations are actually running, and that's what we've looked at. Actually, most of the large school organizations, they do have 3 to 4 people right up underneath that. But this year we're looking at 1, and we've already talked about, like you said, in 6 months to a year, we've already had that conversation looking at in a year, where do we go next? Because there are other things we need to look at. I agree with you. I think we need to look at this position and how it's functioning first before we start branching out to other things. There is a collaboration, we've already discussed this when we looked at the position of the academics and that side of the house, the chief of staff working in tandem together. Because the chief of staff will be collaborating more with the board and the different organizations outside of the district as well. So we've looked at that. Before we start adding multiple layers, I think we need to look at this one, chief of staff, work through this one, and again, allow us in a year to come back and say, here's what we found, and we need to branch out.
No, I agree.
Great, 100%.
Oh,
I
Ms.
had
Fortin,
another
sorry.
question about, the senior director, it says, new
that
job
discipline?
description, is that a
That's
new
discipline.
position, or is that just a new job description?
That was based on the plan, the discipline plan that was
That's what I think,
presented
but-
to you, I wanna say 2 months ago or 2 work sessions ago. And so that senior director of, discipline, I think, was presented and that job
Right.
description
I was
is,
checking.
okay, so the job description matches that and you'll also find that position in the organizational charts as well.
Yeah, I saw it.
Mr. Townsend?
Are we switching it out, or are we still on the chief of staff thing? Like, does it, wherever?
I think Ms. Fortin took us to the senior director.
Yeah, I'm trying to move on, like Mr. Wilson wanted.
Well, you know what, I'm sorry, this is important. I have absolutely no qualms with extending this discussion, I'm sorry. It's important. One last comment, I agree completely on the big district thing. You also need to learn, I think, we also need to learn from the mistakes of big districts as well. I mean, if you look at how Broward handled its response to Parkland, they damaged themselves, I think, with a lot of their own bureaucracy there. This position will not be determined by the position. It will not be determined by how the job description reads. It's going to be determined by the capabilities of the person. And I would reiterate my recommendation to have a broad interview. On the senior director for discipline position, I just wanted to out in the schools, the folks I talk to are extraordinarily both excited and eager, and I think a little skeptical on the kind of show us on the behavior plan. So I would like to suggest that as it gets triggered, as we actually put people in the field, that there becomes some kind of after-action report or case study for individual instances. Say a team goes to X school and they have an experience there. Write up what happened. Write up what they think worked, what they think didn't. It doesn't have to be 10 pages long or anything, but kind of like after-action reports, so we can verify that this is working. And again, this is a kind of chief of staff type thing. So, hey, look, this is working real well, board. Look, and those are the kind of things we can share both with our internal stakeholders and external.
I think Mr. Hill.
So we have a mechanism in place, have structured debriefings. We're going to start weekly because it is new. We've also tried to communicate very clearly that we know this is a new initiative, and we know that implementation is a lot different than a plan. And so we're going to learn a lot as we begin to implement. So those after action debriefings that will occur on a weekly basis, we'll find those things and then communicate those things and work diligently to shore those up. Dr. X and I were discussing that as part of our weekly process to make sure that we're monitoring that very closely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So, well taken.
Okay.
That was just like the follow-up, because why I went there was exactly what I was thinking. And also, our teachers, they just want to see boots on the ground. They want to see help right there. And so we've been trying to force that out there, Mr. Hill, and let them know that that's what these teams are. They are boots on the ground. They're not, having lunch at McDonald's every day.
That's the appropriate message.
Right.
That we will be coming to the schools to support our schools.
Right.
Ms. Porteous, Mr. Barone, back to you.
Just to follow up to Mrs. Fortney's question, the Senior Director of Discipline is reflected on Chart 3 You'll see that, in addition to other boots on the ground, you'll see that 5 behavior specialists
Got it.
are added as well. That's from the mental health categorical, and that's on chart 21.
Yep, thank
Okay?
you.
Mhm.
I just wanna make sure it tied to what we had.
Yes, ma'am, it's directly
Okay.
related.
Ms. Miller?
Real quick, because we've gone, I don't know how we got to that, the behavior team, but where is this located for staff? Because if someone calls me from a school and has an issue, can I say, this is where you can find information on your behavior? Like, where are we giving that information out? This is relatively a new project, and a lot of our staff members in our sites will not understand how it works or how to access it.
It's a good question. So we did an FAQ to principals, and we will be, once we make sure that we're clear and clean on the PowerPoint, we'll clean that up, get that out as well. What we heard loud and clear was they wanted a central person to go to begin to get access for help. And so they will be calling, the message during the principal's name was call Brett Butler if you have any questions. That's the guy that will direct you if you, for some reason, haven't been able to access that. But we'll get that up. It'll be highly visible, and we'll make sure that we communicate that. I'll make a note of that. We'll work with the team. We putting charts together, making sure it's very clear. Some of the ones we used in the initial meeting was a little, you could tell the principals were still trying to figure it out. So we want to simplify those and then get those out to the public.
But Ms. Miller, to answer your question, 'cause I know you want to know where the staff get that information. And once they get the team solidified with everyone and how they're set up by regions, that we'll have that out there, whether we put it on our webpage and create a separate section for the main contact person for that. And we'll make sure that gets out there so they'll have an idea of where to contact.
Do you know the time frame? Like, it's not gonna be first day of school, I'm assuming, but
No.
if we look at it like by the fall, like end of semester?
Right, we can, because see, they have the positions, they gotta get the teams, and they
Right.
gotta hire all the people to put in the teams, and once we get the senior director and all of that. So,
It might be spring before we have,
no, I wouldn't say
It'll be
spring.
Before that.
It'll be
Okay.
before spring.
Yes, we'll have a good idea of what we need,
okay.
probably within a couple of months.
Okay.
Start figuring out those pieces, make sure they're very clear.
Okay. Back to you all, Ms. Cornwall. Ms. Cordy.
If you're done with the staffing, I just wanted to take, we did not get on the agenda for the workshop for the tentative budget. We had last week's meeting and we have tonight's meeting, but I just wanted to see if the board had any questions over the last week with having the tentative before we go tonight and vote. So that's all I was going to do anyway, but if everybody's good, you'll see me tonight and we'll vote this tentative budget.
Any other questions?
I have
Mr.
one- I
Townsend?
have one last point on staff staffing. This thing here, a while back, I asked if we could get the number of positions in
I'm sorry.
each
I'll get that
one of
for you.
those.
Certainly.
I think that would be really helpful, so I just wanna, I'm sorry, that's page
That's in our
6.
equivalency?
Yeah,
That's the equivalency chart?
yeah, it's like how many we have in each
In
category.
each position? Okay, certainly. I apologize about that.
No, it's fine.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you both. Next up, coming before you is Dr. Aikes will come up with the student progression plan. There was one amendment to that.
Mr. Wilson, I'd like time noted for Ms. Porteous to go over there, because that was not very. Good afternoon.
Duly noted. We won't hold you to
I know
that.
that Ms. Everett is passing out just kind of an overview. Again, we got through the executive summary. I know you're thinking, didn't we just go through this and approve the SPP? And the answer is yes, but at the end of every legislative session, you will always have some updates, and if we delayed updating the overall document until the end, we would not open with an approved SPP. So that's the reason why we had to bring this back before you. Some sessions, we have a lot of things that have to be updated because of it, and in other sessions, we do not. So when we're looking at the actual executive summary, what we're going to do is I'll let Ms. Everett kind of walk you through it, and we'll be looking at those items together.
Good afternoon, and as Dr. Ake said, these are really responses to different pieces of legislation. The first one, the state has specified that we need to transfer records when students transfer schools. We need to follow that up with their records within 3 school days. A particular note is it's not just the academic transcripts, which is usually the focus of what we always talk about and think about, but they also specifically mention behavior patterns, threat assessment evaluations, intervention services, psychological evaluations, all of those pieces that a receiving school need to have immediately in order to intervene and provide support services for a student. So that has been added to page 15. The second piece, I don't think we've had this happen in Polk County just because we haven't had it happen, but the state did go in and say any student who has enlisted into the military may wear that uniform if they've been issued their uniform and they're active duty. So a student that might graduate early and come back can wear their uniform to graduation in lieu of a cap and gown. And so that's been added as well. Page 37, they have, the state's gone back and forth with this in different particular years. They have added the piece about career counseling in middle school being back into that piece. And it's not something that we've ever stopped. We've continued to do our career planning with our middle school students. We do it through some of our courses, social studies in particular. We offer courses such as world history with career planning, U.S. history with career planning, civics with career planning. So those components are in the curriculum as well. And we actually use the state system. It's called My Career Shines. It's a state platform, and we do that with our students. So that'll be continuing, but it's actually specified that we are required to do it, but something that we've continued to do in Polk County regardless. So we wanted to include it since it matches the statute. On page 43, the state has gone in and added some clarity regarding academic core information for graduation, and basically we have simply copied that information from statute. I will note, if you start reading this, because initially I was concerned, under science it talks about must also pass the biology EOC. That is specifically referencing students who are pursuing a scholar designation for their diploma. Not all students have to pass that EOC. So I think we'll probably wordsmith that just a little bit before the next one and have it match the social studies statement at the bottom that specifies scholar designation needs U.S. history EOC. It is copied directly from the statute, but I think we could add some clarity for the schools and for parents that may read that document. And then the last piece, the state has added a CTE pathway option for graduation. At this time, we don't have technical assistance papers. We do anticipate the state to come out and say it'll be a district-determined piece. And if that happens, we'll get a committee together and propose some options for career pathway diploma. But it just, again, says exactly what the statute says until we get additional information from the state that specifies what our options are or what the state is actually going to specify for that diploma option. So that's kind of a piece in the works pending more information from the state. Yes, ma'am?
When you get that tap, can you forward it?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Reynolds?
I had a question on the first, on requesting student transcripts that
Yes.
now includes the varied reports of series or recurrent behavior patterns.
Mhm.
If a student is transferring to the district from either out of county in a charter school, private school, whatever, and they don't send a behavior form, is that something that we'll be requesting or?
So we're working out the details for schools that aren't specifically within our system, right? Because we have to be able to not only figure that out with schools outside of us, but also within, to be honest with you. And how do we make sure that that school is aware it even exists? Because how do you know to ask for something that you don't know exists, right? So we're working on those pieces, trying to figure out with our charters and with other districts exactly how that will work. Right now we use a faster system, and it's an electronic transcript system. We're required to use it, which is really nice. It's been there for a long time, but wasn't required by the state for a while, so we were very thankful. It's a very quick turnaround of those transcripts. I anticipate the state will begin including those pieces once they get the system, the database system set up to do that, and those systems will actually support that effort.
I just know we get a lot of reports of students being dismissed from schools that
We
are not
do.
public schools because of behavior, but then we never get any information on it, so.
Well, and remember, private schools aren't held to this.
Right,
So we
but
were.
the charter schools are.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely, yes.
Ms. Reynolds, this, this opens up a whole brave new world of liability for schools, for districts that, and
Right.
charter schools that don't do it.
Okay.
This could be,
And
this
it's
could be
not
a whole
all of
new
them,
industry.
but they're, you
Right.
know, we
And I'm
often get
sure
phone calls.
We'll,
And then
we'll
there's no record
find
of it.
some areas where what's anecdotal, you know, what's protected and those kinds of things as
Okay.
well. So I
Yeah,
think Mr. Bridges is
My
right.
first concern is going to be making sure that we comply, but we're going to be aware of it, that with students that we receive, if we don't get that report from the sending district, the sending school, boy, that can really,
Well, and what is
it
our
could really
responsibility if they
escalate
don't send us a
things
report?
in some of our tort cases.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Townsend?
On the career thing, so just to recap, so what we do already satisfies the.
Yes,
Um,
and we will continue to do it.
You know, in light of the roundtable we had last week, which I thought was really good, I wonder if there's room to put in elements in this, if you want to be an engineer, or if you want to, like, and maybe we do that
Course
already.
recommendations.
Yeah, do we do that already?
Yes, we do.
So if there's a specific,
We look at not just career planning, but the academic track to achieve that.
okay.
And what the recommendations are, not only in high school, but what type of college, and then coursework in college as well. Yes, sir.
What do we do, like, if the school doesn't have that course offering, like, for physics, say at a high school?
Are we talking about the student progression, or are we talking about?
Science, on your pupils progression.
Okay, so, I mean, as it pertains to the statute that's changing, Ms. Fortney, I'm
You know, I
sorry.
know it says that the scholar designation must complete biology, credit in physics, or chemistry, but don't we have high schools that don't offer physics? And so that course is not an option.
This is core. Right.
And it also states the equally rigorous science course, so
So
it'll be
there
a
could
goal
be
of ours
others.
to try to
Well,
get
that's
that.
my point, Dr.
Yes,
Riggs,
ma'am.
so we need physics in every high school, is my opinion as a science student.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Reynolds?
For the CTE pathway option information, I know you mentioned that that hasn't come down yet and that
Right.
there'll be a committee once you do. Do we have any plans to include some of our local businesses on that committee as far as if they're the ones that, you know, if Lakeland Electric's gonna accept them right out of high school, kind of what?
I will tell you, you're a little bit ahead from us, ahead of us, but Mr. Cochran will absolutely be involved in that, and because he has advisory boards,
I see.
I'm sure that he'll include some of them as well. Yes, ma'am.
Perfect, thank you.
Anything else,
Just
Mr.
to
Townsend?
flag, I think this is potentially a very strong tool. I'm sure, I know we probably already is a strong tool, but I hope that we're the career course and the plan and all that. I just would encourage us to be thinking about it constantly.
We've been looking at this and kind of tracking, because we anticipated this was coming up, but we really have never stopped.
Yeah.
We had the option of changing our courses back without including that piece, and we've always kept it in there, believing that this was a key piece for students and advisement.
Any other questions? Okay,
Thank you very much.
Okay, and the next one, Mr. Cochran, is coming up about Davenport Community Campus and Polk Acceleration Academy. The name change on both of those.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
In September of last year, we received a cease and desist letter from Acceleration Academies LLC asking us to cease and desist using the name Acceleration Academy and graduate candidate. We made arrangements to respond. There was a response from Boswell and Dunlap, which let them know that we would be making efforts to change the name. We had selected a name earlier in the year. Unfortunately, one of our charter applicants was using a name that was very similar, so we retracted that name and went back to the school. They came up with Polk Graduation Academy. Additionally, with the Davenport Community School, we have moved from that location and are now located in Haines City, and we have always had a presence in Lakeland. We felt that the Fresh Start name, which was actually the name that the students know the school by, would be most appropriate. So the name was suggested and approved by the staff to change the name to the Fresh Start Community School.
Any questions?
Great.
Mr. Townsend?
Too easy. Thank
Is the
you.
actual name Grad Academy or graduation?
I'm sorry.
Is the actual name Grad or graduation?
The proper name is the Fresh Start, let's see, the Polk Grad Academy.
Okay.
Just grad. And that is actually an acronym for Graduation Results Achieved Daily.
Okay, so it's like capital R.
There you go.
Gotcha, okay.
So, will it be all caps then?
Yeah, it should be all caps.
It should be all caps.
Yeah.
It should be all caps.
See, not all my questions are new value.
None of the questions.
It's a good catch.
Thank you, so we'll make that correction to make sure we have that.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item before you, we have, I see Kim on with the Polk Vision. And this actually is coming up.
So you can run the PowerPoint? It's right. It is the first one. Okay. Good afternoon. Today we'll talk about, this item is about safe routes to school and the provision of sidewalks within 1 mile of the schools and how Polk Vision and the TPO, how they're prioritizing this. We have Ms. Kim Long with us and Mr. Ryan Korczek. Korczek. Okay, but before I continue, I want to introduce Mrs. Pam Luce. She's our representative for the Facilities Department on this, on the infrastructure and the Polk Vision, and she has been attending the meeting. So Pam, why don't you come up here and I'll go back there.
Tag, you're it, Pam.
You're on the hot seat.
Saw what you did there.
Yeah.
Good morning, or I'm sorry, I'm used to the morning meetings. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board, school board. Again, I'm Ryan Korczek with the Polk Transportation Planning Organization, and I'm also the co-chair of Polk Vision's Infrastructure Task Force. Again, here today to talk to you about sidewalks and really the end of a long study, a multi-year study where we've evaluated all the schools, all 140 public schools in Polk County, to look at what their sidewalk needs are, where the needs are, where some of the problems are, where the gaps are. We're at the point now where we've completed that study. We're going before all the jurisdictions in Polk County. We're about halfway through, seeking their support on a resolution, and I believe that resolution is included in your packet, so you can see it. And that's one of the things we're asking here today, is that the school board also review and approve the resolution as well. So I'll go ahead and get into my presentation. In terms of the infrastructure group or team that's part of Polk Vision, is comprised of all kinds of different individuals, public, private sector. We've got planners, engineers, folks from economic development, healthcare, schools, parks, you name it. And Pam sits on our infrastructure group. She's a regular attendee there as well. And our goal is reducing pedestrian injuries and fatalities. Certainly in close proximity to schools, that's important to us. Again, safe and improved access to schools. Sidewalk gaps within 1 mile of the school. Again, we've done our analysis and kind of the attention getter here. It's listed in bold on the slide, but got about 133 miles of major roads in and around our schools that are lacking sidewalks. As you know, this group knows, many students, they need to walk or bike to get to school. That's really their only means. They might not have a bus, or they may not have mom or dad be able to take them there, so that's the case. You also may know, in terms of bicycle and pedestrian crashes, unfortunately, Polk County is in the top 10, when it comes to being worst in the state of Florida in terms of bicycle pedestrian injuries and fatalities. Luckily, a majority of these, of course, are not school-age children, but still there's a problem there and something that we need to address. As part of our evaluation goes, again, we looked at all the schools, came up with, again, a list of detailed evaluation of sidewalk needs. Again, there's a lot there. And again, while we're here, we're informing everyone of where we're at. We're seeking support on a resolution. This just is a couple maps that are coming up that show some of the schools with the least amount of sidewalk coverage. This map happens to be in the Haines City, Davenport area. You can see some of the schools there, and then the lines in yellow are some of the top or critical needs for sidewalks in this area. Have another one of the Winter Haven area, again, showing a lot of the school locations, again, with those top needs or critical roads in need of sidewalks. This is a graphic. This is something that we're putting together now that we've gotten all this work done. We'd like to package it a little bit better, and this is just showing you what we'd like to do on kind of for a school-by-school basis. Certainly the schools with the top schools with the least amount of sidewalk coverage is an infographic very similar to this. This is a little dated, but this is Comby Elementary School. Again, it's showing you the amount of sidewalk coverage in close proximity to the school. A quick little map showing about a mile buffer around the school and just showing what some of the needs are there. Listing the sidewalk gaps, and then we also have, in this case, the amount of school enrollment as well as the estimated walkers at that school. While we've been doing this evaluation at the TPO in partnership with, again, all the jurisdictions, in particular Polk County, the Florida Department of Transportation, we funded or have what we call programmed a lot of projects. And I chose this list of projects because these have been on a list. I've worked at the county for over 20 years. A lot of these projects, I'm sure some of you are familiar with some of these or been advocating for sidewalks on some of these streets. This is a tough list. We've been working at them. What I can report is either all of these roads or at least portion of these roads are receiving sidewalks in the next 2 to 3 years. These, again, are programmed. It represents in excess of $5 million worth of funding from both county as well as the state of Florida, FDOT. 2 projects recently that just received Safe Route to School funding, you may be aware of, are in the vicinity of Crystal Lake Elementary and Middle. That one's programmed to start, I think, within about a year or so. And then last year we got word that we received about $500,000 in addition to help support sidewalks in the vicinity of Inwood Elementary in West Winter Haven. Kind of concluding here, I was told to be brief, so I'm just about wrapping up, but if you're looking at your resolution, this is essentially the main points after it states now therefore be it resolved. But again, we're asking you to support Polk Vision, the TPO, in reducing the injury fatality rate and close the sidewalk gaps within the model of the school. Recognize the importance of funding sidewalk improvements, especially those identified within 1 mile of the school. This doesn't so much apply to Polk County School Board, but one of the things that we're doing with all the local governments, because in not all instances this is the case, we're asking the local governments to include sidewalk requirements in conjunction with new development or redevelopment consistent with the land development regulations. So as new things come in, and it might be just a 100 or 100-yard section of sidewalk, but that's coming in when something new is developed. So, Mr. Chair, that wraps up my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Mr. Townsend and Ms. Cunningham.
Thank you very much. Is this presentation available? Can you share it with some?
Certainly, most definitely, yes.
Generally, is there a veiled request for funding in there from us? I mean,
No, sir.
It's okay if there is. I'm just curious.
No.
I know there's people are discussing impact fee spending, and sidewalks aren't exactly capacity, but where is there any potential, and this may be for our folks over here, is there any overlap between school impact fees and could any school impact fees be used for sidewalk construction that's not directly related to school? Is that an option?
I can answer that. Actually, Mr. Townsend, back in 2016, the school board submitted and approved a resolution, and there is $250,000 a year out of impact fees that goes into the sidewalk fund. So we've already voted to support that.
That was before me.
February 2016, right?
Yeah, that's before me. Good. All right. No, I mean, I think if the impact fees are going to be going up, I mean that's a priority to think about, like increasing that fund if possible. The graphic with the schools is great. I would love to see each individual school package like that. That's what we're working towards. Fantastic. That's it. Thank you.
Ms. Cunningham.
My question was, how did you arrive at the 1 mile? Because with busing, we will pick up students who are 2 miles or greater. So my question is, how did you arrive at the 1 mile marker?
Yeah, I don't know if it's I don't have a really good answer for that. Essentially, it's just what we chose.
What we can.
Near to the school as close as we could get. We have, I didn't really cover it, but just so you know, we have a comprehensive evaluation really of all the major roads in Polk County. So technically speaking, you could look out 2 or 3 or 5 miles, or whatever you wanted. I guess for this, we're focusing most close to the school. What are the needs closest to the school? Maybe work out from there.
Super. Thank you very much.
Ms. Reynolds?
I just want to say thank you. Inwood's one of my schools, and it's 98% walking, so I'm very familiar with the area and how terrifying it is to drive those neighborhoods at 7:45 in the morning or 3:15 in the afternoon when you have kindergartners walking home by themselves. But also to tag on to what Billy was saying, as you're getting these maps of each of the schools, if we could get access to those, it tells a great story, and I would love the opportunity to help get that message out, because it tells a really great story, is why we need these.
We'll make those available. I also just want to say that the majority of these segments may fall within the county, but all of the major municipalities have been extremely supportive of this movement, and this is the first comprehensive sidewalk map that's ever been performed in Polk County. We have never connected them before. So the support of the Polk County TPO and the BOCC has been an integral partner together with Polk Vision and the school district on this initiative. I also want to say that the BOCC has doubled their funding for sidewalks in the past 2 years. They've gone from a $1 million a year investment to over $2 million a year, and it's as a result of this collaborative effort and their acknowledgement that we need to make our streets safe for access to schools. So with that, I think, unless you have any further questions, yes?
Mr. Wilson?
Mr. Chairman?
Well, just to comment, first, Mr. Cordick and Ms. Long, thank you so much for considering us as a partner in this. We appreciate that so much, and we're happy, I'm sure, listening to the board and the superintendent, we're happy to help any way we can. A resolution is the least we can do. But Ms. Luce, how do we, the funds that we have set aside, how do we coordinate those with the county, and do you know offhand?
I'm not too familiar with it.
Well, I know, the county has a sidewalk advisory committee.
Okay.
The school board has a representative on that committee, and they go through what is submitted and rank it and prioritize it. And I can say that in the last few years, as the infrastructure team has come together and recommended sidewalks, that has increased a lot of the funding and raised the priority of areas around our school that they may not have done because they would not have been aware, except for the studies that have been done, especially through the TPO and the consultants that they have hired.
And I, Mr. Townsend, if we can increase that amount somehow through impact fees, especially given that we may see some increased impact fees, we may want to have a conversation about that. I know when I first came on the board, in my district, there was a young man who was killed by a car, and there was a big push for additional sidewalks. There was also a young man who was killed in crossing road. I think he went to Town Rock. So that was one of the most painful experiences I've ever been through, listening to the parents and trying to find a way to find pathways for sidewalks, and in that case also I think a traffic signal. But this is a huge start. So thank you.
Ms. Cunningham?
Who commissioned the study?
I'm a direct person. I'll try to answer that directly. The TPO, the Polk Transportation Planning Organization, was the lead behind this study. It was a multi-year effort, started back in 2017. We're looking at the worst. I think we started with the top 10 worst schools. We've expanded that and essentially completed the study. Now it's countywide, comprehensive now.
Well, a huge thank you to your organization for commissioning this, because the safety of our students is first and paramount, and this is going to go a long way at the mile level to be able to keep our students safe and the families that walk with them to school. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Townsend?
On the Crystal Lake thing, you mentioned something called a safe pathways or safe path school.
Safe routes to school.
Safe routes. Is that solely sidewalks, or are there other things built into it?
I believe there's lighting. That was a few years ago. We look at literally hundreds of projects that we fund in transportation. I believe that one, yes, the sidewalk improvements, crosswalks, as well as lighting in and around the middle school and the elementary.
Yeah,
it was in excess of,
my point is there's a specific deaf crosswalk that if putting something there, that would be great. So that I was just encouraged to hear that. But it's not just sidewalks. It's a more holistic approach.
And that's something else that the county, the TPO has done on the school board's behalf, is the safe routes for schools grants applications. they are continually watching out for us and submitting those applications, which is how some of this funding came into being.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. Okay. Ryan?
Awesome job.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Ms. Usher has the next item,
All right, thank you.
which is the attendance boundary committee. And
Okay.
she's gonna talk about that as we're looking at our new construction. There's 2 items.
This is a discussion item on the creating an attendance boundary committee for Polk County School District. And the reason it's really important to have a committee, I listed 3 things. The data analysis. We look at the school utilization, the projection, development in the area, and we review those. Community input, it's a process that really needs community input. You're making changes to their most precious commodity or whatever their student. So the community input is extremely important, and it has to be comprehensive, not just utilization, but we have to look at busing and other things that come into effect, programs, and how many times the student has been moved and all that when we're doing the analysis. In this 5-year plan, we have 3 elementary school, 1 high school, and 1 middle school that we'll have to create boundaries for. And at the same time, we have a list of schools that we have some highlighted in red, where the utilization is 100% or almost 100. And then adjacent to that, we might have underutilized school. So we have to balance enrollment at these schools. So the committee will not just doing new boundaries, but will also be looking at ways to balance enrollment, taking into account the new growth occurring in that area. The resolution, again, this is for discussion. I have the makeup with 13 people. If you all want to change it, please let me know. And the way it's broken down, 1 member from each board, 1 from the superintendent, 1 from the PTA, 1 from the ESC Advisory Council, 1 from the Hispanic Chamber, 1 from NAACP, and 1 representing government. So if there's any change to that I have it made up with as 13 right now. Just let me know. I'm looking for something to write on, if you'll tell me.
That's a question.
Ms. Thompson?
So you just came up with that group on your own. I mean, that's a pretty good group. I must say.
That's great.
I wonder. I mean, I think this is a great idea. I think you're right that it needs to be comprehensive, not just about zoning. I mean, I would suggest that we invite someone from the TP, like some representing local governments, kind of vague. It could be anybody. I mean, I would recommend somebody from Polk Vision. Maybe ask him. And,
Okay.
And someone from the TPO as well, because they have command of data at hand. You know.
But we do work with the TPO closely, so means we can get the data, and but certainly it's up to you if you want us to have 1 from the Polk Vision and 1 from the TPO.
As things come up in the discussion, they may have insights that are useful. And I mean, the board can take care of this, I guess, in our appointments as well. But I think, I can't believe I'm going to be the one who says this, but doesn't look like we have anybody from industry there, like from the builders or
The only one
whatever,
in the industry, the Hispanic Chamber, but beside that, nobody else.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend inviting somebody from the real estate or development community to be part of it as well. Again, I think as many different perspectives as we get would be well. So.
Right, and again, with the appointments from the appointees from the board, they can be from whatever discipline.
We can all accomplish that too with the people we.
Yeah, but it kind of sets a priority for the organization of interest that we want to guarantee that we hear from. I guess.
Ms. Cunningham, then Ms. Reynolds.
Question, having done these before, do we have, or should we list the person from our staff who is and excuse me for the wrong way to say this, but the numbers cruncher? Who's the person who goes in to an address and says, where am I, that can say, well, if we move this group there, we're talking rezoning, basically. If this person moves from point X to Y, you gotta have that person from staff, and I just think that needs to be on there.
Right,
Because
and
without that ability to be able to tell the group, hey, if we move that 150 subdivision to, here's the impact that it'll have.
Right, if something comes up, we'll give you different scenarios, the ABC.
Yes.
And the thing is, we do not have a person on staff.
You don't.
So we have been working
Okay.
with the Regional Planning Council, and thanks to IT with Dominic. And
Okay.
they have been doing all our GIS for us.
Have they? Okay.
And so we will tell them, move this area
Yes,
out.
and how does it impact the
And so
other?
that's what, so we've been using that, and they will be at the ABC
They will,
meetings also.
they will be. Okay, since it's not defined there, that's what, I just thought that was so
Right,
important.
they'll be part of staff.
Because you're making huge decisions at that point. Okay, and then I agree with Mr. Townsend, maybe perhaps adding to what you just said, since there's 7 of us, we don't need 7 realtors or 7 bankers on this. So if maybe we divided up real estate, banking, legal, I don't know, maybe each one of us could find a person from that particular background, maybe. You know what I'm saying? So that there's a diversity of the community leaders that we appoint, perhaps, just a thought.
Agreed. I mean, I think the easiest thing to do, because I think there are a lot of very legitimate interests already represented there. I think the building industry is an interest that we, in the essence of having good faith, maybe build them into this category specifically.
Specifically.
And then,
okay.
and then we, and then we try to be diverse and.
We should be.
I mean, because it might not be a business community person, or it might be,
Right.
it's,
Could be clergy or whatever, sure.
right,
Okay.
right.
Thank you for this. This is a great group. The only one that I may recommend adding is a representative from PEA, just to make sure our teachers are the boots on the ground that are gonna have to be the ones that the parents complain to when they're driving further or get schools moved to. So to have somebody represent that group, I think would be very helpful.
Sounds good, I like that.
Good idea.
What about ASME? Aren't they do the maintenance part as well? Like our maintenance department, they're already driving forever.
Bus drivers, right? Bus drivers.
Yeah. Bus drivers, ASME.
Transportation will be, I mean, we'll ask to have a transportation representative at every meeting. We already work very closely with transportation in making any boundary recommendation. So Rob has his staff at all our meetings. So to see how that will impact and the routes and drivers and buses. I have the membership, certainly, residents of Polk County. And the thing is, they have to be able to serve through the boundary cycle. This is really, time is of the essence. So we don't want to have to cancel a postponed meeting. And so they have to be able to attend. They have to comply with all the ethics code as a public officials, as Florida public officials, and the conflict of interest too. They can't have conflict of interest.
Sorry, I have one more. I know we talked about this after some of the redistricting happened this summer, but is the plan with this to be looking at the next 5 years as we're building schools so that we're not redistricting every year, but we
That's
can kind
correct,
of use
right.
some foresight
And that's why we're tracking the building permits and the construction growth, so we have good projections. We don't want to move the kids more than once, so.
Perfect, thank you.
The meetings will be public, duly noticed, they'll be advertised in accordance with Robert's rule. And this committee will be responding to the superintendent. So if they come up with, this is the recommendation we want, I'll have an ABC meeting with the superintendent present. If she likes that, then she'll bring that to you for board action. If not, she'll tell us go back to the table and redo it. And the way it is, as long as we won't have the terms, as long as you want the appointee to serve, the boundary cycle will be from September to June. We want everything probably finalized before June, so we can, if it's an August opening, we want to make sure we inform the parents before then. The quorum with 40%, and usually it's 51, but I want to make sure that we're able to have these meetings. And failure to attend 2 consecutive meetings will be removal from the board. And if a board member changes, that appointee will be able to serve out the term until the other board member appoints somebody else.
I would suggest that you, when this happens, you set your meetings ahead of time. So if somebody says, you know, the fourth Thursday of every month, I have blah, 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 I can't, we move on. Something like that. So when we ask, we know exactly, at least for us. So
That's
that,
the first question I get
yeah,
anytime I find
right.
someone.
When are the meetings and how often are they and what time? I just think it would go a long way if
Certainly.
you have that
Well,
set up ahead of time before we
It'll be
ask.
evening meetings too, so, like the sales tax committee.
Okay.
So, so just clarification, I had 13, so it'll be 15, one from real estate and one from PEA?
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Perfect.
And I'll bring it back to you in August, the resolution creating the board.
That's great.
We want to start in September, so we need the appointments quickly.
Awesome. So we need to be thinking.
Could you possibly send us potential meeting times before then so that we can start
Okay, sounds good.
informally asking people? Just in case we get a couple no's before
Okay,
we find someone.
okay, sounds good.
Mr. Townsend?
Can we get this presentation?
Certainly.
And are you gonna pick like the government representative? Who's picking the ones that are set? Like,
I was going to talk to the county first, so to give the county that opportunity, since they have a lot of unincorporated areas and we work closely with them, so maybe the new county manager.
okay.
To,
Ms. Miller?
You mentioned real estate, because there's 10,000 real estate individuals here in Polk County. The Polk Builders Association would probably be someone I would consult with.
And not the-
They're a specific organization. That probably makes
It
sense.
supports the whole county.
Yeah.
Okay, and we just want to make, sometimes working with builders in the other county, they want their entire development to go into this school. So that's why it's not, it's under code of ethics and all that, to make sure that they look at the criteria they're supposed to be looking at. So,
Any other questions on that item? Okay.
Oh, you may even find someone at one of the colleges or universities that works in development planning real estate, if you want to find someone who's not actually involved, because I understand your concern.
That's a good
Our
idea.
county commissioners have lots of developers.
You're right.
So maybe work with someone in that, in post-secondary that studies or teaches in that field, to find someone who's knowledgeable but not, that
Okay.
close.
all right, thank you. Mrs. Byrne, I think I have the other one
You
too,
do.
right?
You have items, set 'em.
Okay. Just an update on the capital plan. I'm sorry. So I'll go into it straight. Every year, we come back to you with the updated capital plan. Last year, we did this, and we had certain projects. We are making a couple amendments, but I just want to reiterate some things. So it's just 5 topics. Our goal to provide guidance and structure so the public know that what we're going to do, the board knows what we're going to do, so it gives you some guideline. Continuity and predictability, they can rely on this project coming through. And transparency, especially with the sales tax and accountability. That's why it's good to have a CIP. Last year, we came up with the goals to meet the level of service for capacity, which is 100%, so we have to make sure we plan for new capacity when needed. But at the same time, we just don't want to create all the new schools and not take care of the older schools. So we list modernization too for existing schools. We continue to provide the major maintenance. Security, that's such in the forefront for us right now, with the sales tax money doing intercom, fire alarm, single point of entry. So those are really prioritized out of the sales tax. And of course, the CIP also addresses transportation and transportation needs. Some projects we have underway right now. With Mulberry High School, we're finalizing the design. Davenport, we have started construction. I mentioned all the safety and security. We're doing the AC in the kitchen. Yeah, thank you. We've put in several playgrounds, athletic fields improvement, we're redoing the track, we're putting in lights, different things at the various schools, a new agriculture building at Lake Region. We just finished the traffic circulation at Lincoln. Well, actually, I don't think it's completed yet, but we're doing the traffic circulation at Lincoln, and they also got a new playground, the pavilion at Stanbaugh. We're doing the fuel station at Lake Wales and L6, and we're finishing up Bartow Master Plan. This just gives you an idea of all the revenues we have and the impact fee. We still have it at 50%, Mr. Wilson. We don't have the new one in there yet. So we're projecting that at 100 million, the sales tax 252, the LCI, and the miscellaneous being fuel tax and CO&DS. This just shows some of our revenues, but I know I sent you an attachment that has revenues and expenditures and how they're broken down with the tax levy, the impact fees, the half-cent sales tax, the bond, and the LCI. New schools. We had in the last plan an elementary school 23A. I brought to you and you all approved the property in Tierra del Sol. We had to move that up to 28. We had it as 23A, so we'll start on that next year. We're working on the high school right now. We're in the process of buying a new middle school site for 22A, and a new elementary school, this should be 25C. Yes, and that moved up 1 year. We have the Kings Fort replacement also coming up like next year, and then later on we'll have the elementary school in the Winter Haven area. Some change, well, the Mulberry Senior High, that's the same, so there's no change. Albert, Old Davenport, we're working on that. And these are just those in the 5-year plan. We have Southwest at 30, Crystal Lake, Lena Vista, Floral, and Alta Vista, and Lake Alfred, they're beyond the 5 years. So that might change next year when we bring it up to you, but right now we kept them in the same place. Additions, we're doing the middle school gym right now, and the next in line will be the Denniston Middle School, and everything else is the same as we presented last year. The only, no. I have Bartow Senior second phase. I don't know where the red arrow went. It was supposed to be up there. That is new for $43 million. And that will be a big classroom replacement for $21 million, a field house upgrade to the fire academy, and the band room. So it's like really, after this, the campus should be completely upgraded. Safety, I talked about that already, and these are other projects we have. We have a whole list of them that we're currently doing. We're doing, putting lights at the practice field at Bartow High, a lot of roof projects, new HVAC, so just some of the projects highlight. And this gets into more, Jason, the debt service, the buses and White Fleet, portable maintenance, transfer, equipment, site acquisition, and technology to round out the capital plan. So I'll come back to you in September with the real plan, with the projections. Just wanted to give you an update on what we're doing right now with the capital plan.
Mr. Wilson?
Ms. Escher, just a couple questions. What is the capital outlay and debt service trust fund?
Was that license plate?
No, that's part of the revenues you have.
Yes, but I thought you were asking me where the funds come from. It's not a whole lot.
Yeah, no, I know. But I'm just wondering where the funds come from. That comes from license plate?
Yes, I think that one is from license plate. That's what I thought that was your question.
Yes, it was.
It's capital outlay and debt service.
Okay. Yeah, that's it. My
Is
other
it
question has
license
to
plate
do...
or telephone lines?
Not telephone lines.
License plate? Okay, thank you. License plate, okay. Sorry.
Fortunately, people are still buying license plates. The second question is at Spook Hill. When I visit there, the one thing that they always are concerned about is up front where they have their office space. It's very tight and very limited. In fact, they have a broom closet that doubles as a restroom. So it's they desperately need some help, and I don't know if anyone's ever brought that to your attention, but each time I go, that's the one thing they.
Oh, we have Spook Hill coming in 3 years with an remodeling and a cafeteria addition in 3 years. We have that in the plan.
Okay.
We don't identify all. It's not the full amount of money. With this year, you'll get in the planning money for Spook Hill, and then later on. In 22, 23, you get the rest of the funds. But we have identified projects for all of our schools. So every year we go about prioritizing it, working closely with our service managers and staff, the school staff. And because we have to have a balanced CIP, we just have to stagger them out.
Yeah.
But I'll make a note of Spook Hill.
Thank you.
Ms. Fortney?
Mr. Wilson?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
The CO and DS is also if the state would go out and bond for all K-12, and they would disproportionately give this district money, that's where that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think that's a lot.
Huh? Is that because of the electric?
I know,
But they also do the thing.
yeah, they don't bond them.
That comes from the state revenues.
Oh, Ms. Usher, thank you, from paper towels to, you know,
Oh.
buying land. You're in charge of it all right there. Something went by, and I guess I missed reading this too. Kingsford replacement, have I missed that? What is that about?
I'll bring that back to you.
Okay.
We talked about Kingsford from long ago, I guess from the first sales tax and having to do something at that school. And the thing is, it's scheduled for modernization based on condition, but there is a property we own. Pam, what do you refer to that property as? Bailey Road property. I always get the B's mixed up because we have, what else? We have so many of them. The Bailey Road property about rebuilding the school there. And keeping, so we can keep the students at Kingsford while we build the new schools. And then we repurpose Kingsford.
Gotcha.
So that's the plan we have, but if you all want me to do something else, the problem, if I want to modernize Kingsford, I don't know where we'll hold them unless we do a portable campus. And since we have that property already, and that's close by within the attendance boundaries, thought about building it there.
Cool. Thank you.
Ms. Miller?
Do you know, if the schools that are struggling, I'm thinking of Philip O'Brien, that my office does a lot with, helping support that school, and I toured it, and I have never seen such a small cafeteria in my life. And that school's over 700 with 2 grade levels eating in their rooms. If we're getting support from the state because that school's already struggling academic-wise, does that push money to facilities to help expand
We have
that?
at the principal meeting, the superintendent brought that to my attention, and so staff is already looking at ways we can expand that cafeteria. And secondly, they need additional space for the coach, so we're
Yes.
looking at those 2 issues right now.
Okay, does the state provide any support on that angle or just
On facilities,
academic?
no,
Okay.
just academic.
Okay.
Mr. Townsend?
That's good news, thank you. I'm glad.
I mean, that's your school, I'm sorry, I busted into District
No,
1.
I'm good with it. You know how I roll on this, so. Couple of quick questions. And this isn't exactly related to it, but is there somewhere on the website where we can get updated capacity reports, like, or just whatever your latest capacity report is, just posted somewhere on websites?
We can provide that to Rachel. We have a utilization chart, and we can give this to her to put on our page.
Yeah, I would just like to have access,
Okay.
easy access to that.
All right.
How does the 800, what's the status on the 800 megahertz? I heard that there was a complication with using sales tax through the grapevine. I just wanted to see if that's still part of the, so what's going on with that?
Yeah, sales tax is not a avenue use, so we're gonna play around with it. 1.5.
Okay. So we still got it.
Oh, yeah, no.
We still got it.
It was
Okay.
always one or the other, we were just trying to fit it in.
That's fine.
Okay.
Sales tax and got a negative one.
Okay, all right.
Another source.
Right. And then, third, this is, I wanted to take a moment to give an example of really good stakeholder management. I'm gonna embarrass Angela. I got a call from a lady who said we had infested her house with rats on when we infested her mom's house with rats. And when we tore down Davenport, the old Davenport school, I guess they went scurrying off. This is like late on a Friday. I reached out to Angela to refer her to her, and like I think she was talking to her about like 5:30 or 6 on a Friday afternoon, and had somebody set up to go out there first thing Monday morning, and instead of the woman saying, "Oh my God, the district infested my mom's house with rats," she was saying the district saved us from the rats. So that is the best, that's how PR really works. So thank you for that. Thank you for on a Friday afternoon dealing with that, and I appreciate it.
Certainly. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Right here, Susan. My bad.
Any question on the informational before break? Okay, 10-minute break?
10-minute break?
10-minute break.
Yeah.
And-
All right, we'd like to get started again, please. So the next item on the agenda is review of the school board meeting agenda this evening. We have Keaton Clark from Brigham Academy leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We have some special recognitions, and Ms. Cunningham, you're coming forward to do those. We have 3 sets of minutes. Any questions, comments about the minutes? So on approval of the minutes for the June school board meeting, let's see if I can find my notes here. On page 19, it's item C37. It indicates that I voted affirmatively for that, but I abstained from that because of my relationship with Polk State College. So we want to change that, please.
Which one is that?
It's item C37, page 19. All right, thank you. We have some new administrators. Do we have some new administrators?
Yes, we do.
Bunch of
A lot.
All right, so moving on to the consent agenda, item C11 through item C15. Yes, sir.
Just on C11, on these, the write-offs, I'm assuming these folks aren't on our plan anymore? Like they're no longer on the plan, is that correct?
Since 2016, I think it says, right?
Right. The write-offs retired, the premium write-offs?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Perone?
I mean, I guess we're not writing off debts of somebody who's still on our plan. Like that's
No,
my only.
I think they retired,
They were-
216 or prior, is what it said.
Retired.
Well, no, I'm retired, but like on the plan, on the retirement plan, on the retiree plan. Isn't it the retiree plan? Or is it left over from when they were active?
I'd have to.
Okay, I'll come back to it, it's fine. That was just,
They are no
I
longer
wanna
on
say,
the plan.
I think the debt was incurred while they were on the
On the plan.
retiree plan.
Right.
Right, and they're no longer on it.
and they're no longer on it.
That piece I need to find out
Okay.
if they're no longer on it. I would assume
Okay.
if they owed us, we would.
Yeah.
Or deceased, it said.
Yeah, some of them canceled the policies. As you look at it, cancel policies. I see a couple of deceased.
Deceased, yeah.
Mr. Brown?
No,
Yeah, question,
just
okay.
because if they're with us, we're covering it.
Did it say canceled somewhere? I missed it. Okay,
I
I'm
see
sorry.
one
That's
of them
fine.
say cancel.
Okay, it's fine. Okay.
Cancel policy
It's not worth going down the rabbit trail on. I just wanted to make sure we weren't writing off the debts of somebody who's still on the plan. That's all.
Okay. Any other questions, comments about items C11 through C15?
Yeah, he's deceased.
C16 through C20, business service contracts. Questions, comments?
Hold on a second.
Okay.
Actually, I think I have one on the. Yeah, the cloud collaboration storage services, this is back on the consent, I'm sorry. That's, is that an ongoing, and like that's not new, is that something we pay each year?
Which item?
Which item?
It's the bid recommendation, C12 bid recommendations.
Good recommendation.
Oh, okay.
It's just a cloud collaboration software. I just wanted to ask if that was new or if that's
Pretty sure
been
that's
ongoing.
annual.
It's item number 1 on the
It's item
list.
number 1.
Yeah.
It's a renewal for additional from.
No, it's just renewal, I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay. So, any questions about items through C20? So we have a number of donations. We have cash and non-cash donations, and as always, we're incredibly grateful to the business community and our community in general for those donations and all they mean to our school district. So we just want to thank all of our partners who make those donations. That takes us to, any questions about any of the donations? Questions, comments about any of the donations? Okay? That takes us to item C44 through item C47. Non-cash, no, I apologize. Let's do this, C46 through C50. So, Ms. Usher, I have a question about item C49 and C50. It looks like we're increasing the budget on these two items. For C49, we're increasing the budget, it looks like by $2 million.
Mr. Wilson, you'll approve for Davenport $2 million for design
Yes.
and pre-construction costs. This is adding the construction cost of like 24 million.
Okay.
So I separated it so we can start on the design. So
Okay.
you all approved the 2 million originally. With Mulberry, it was 4 million you all approved, and now the rest is coming for the construction.
Okay.
And you'll see it one more time again for the GMP.
Okay, I understand
Okay.
now. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I'm fine with leaving that on the consent agenda. All right, so item C51 through C53. Questions, comments? Items C54 through we're going to the regular agenda, items R54 through R58.
I have on R58.
Okay?
Just want to make sure what I'm looking at. On the little spreadsheet of the SROs, there's like a sub number for some of them that's not a sergeant. Like there's the PCSO has 17 officers, and then there's a 4, and then there's a sergeant. What's that for? And same with Haines City, it has a 2. Are those different cost officers or like that? I don't.
So, yes, the cost of the sergeant is higher because they make more than and some are at.
The deputy. Those are the number of
LPD
officers.
first? Is that what you're looking at?
No, if you look at Haines City and you look at PCSO, there's a 4, which is like four officers at, and then there's 2 below. There's a 2 doesn't say what that is, and then the same with the PCSO. There's 4. I just don't know what that category is. It doesn't say SARS. I mean the sergeant for the PCSO is below the 4. I'm just trying to figure out what that 4 is.
Okay, so for the Haines City, the 2 are at 100% instead of 75%, and the reason being is because of the additional officers they had to have due to the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act.
Okay.
And then,
Okay.
right, there's no different in category, just the district's percentage that we're paying.
And I think just one note on this, it's pretty striking how much more that the deputies cost us per I mean, am I reading that right? That they're like 15,000 or more than the city guys? Folks?
So in some of those, in some cases, yes, sir.
Is there a reason for that?
It's just they're, they're made up,
It's
their
just
salary.
it's just the price they charges. Okay.
Any other questions about items R54 through R58? So any questions, comments about items R60 through R62? Questions, comments about items R63 through R65? Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Porteous, I don't know how you keep up with our coming and goings of our staff, but I found 27 pages of tiny print. I read every name, I knew a lot of them. I reached out to them privately, and I spoke with Ms. Bird about one band director we lost. And again, I just beg beg you to at least do something with contract language or to help our employees out to make them want to stay in Polk County, and I appreciate you meeting with me the other day for so long. I just wanted to say that.
Any other comments, questions about items R63 through R65?
Sort of along those lines, I went back and looked at some of the previous ones. I would guess that we're pretty busy during the summer, that's a bigger chunk.
It's on reappointment time, so generally annual contracts for teachers run from the first contract day through the last contract day, which is generally May, or maybe right around the last day of school. In addition, teacher temporary certificates and or professional certificates expire June 30th. So as a result, all of those actions are now on here as well. So if a teacher fails to update their certificate for whatever reason and keep it valid, then we have to terminate per state rules.
But these two reports would typically be the big, like,
These are
this
the reports
this one and one before would be the ones that have the most action on them, I guess, right?
So June, July, and August are our biggest movements in terms of HR.
And just one thing I noticed is just how many first-year teachers we lose. I mean, like, they're done. I mean, it's I don't know if there's just a support question that, I mean, again, it's, you have to figure out if you want to do this or not. I get it. But to the extent that we can keep people past the first year, you know, I just a general observation that we seem to hire a lot of people and lose them after a year. So that's just my thought.
Ms. Courtney?
Well, I don't want to speak for Tedra, but they are trying to work to keep those folks with their engagement. Trust me. But the other thing I did notice, I we lose a lot to just non-education. Like, they are just leaving education, period.
I was about to say that teaching is not for everyone, and
But
so
a lot of the
you
ones that are my
in
friends, they're like 15, 16-year veterans.
Right.
So we're losing some valuable experience in these schools and people that can mentor and help those beginning teachers. They're just, you know, the comment I hear all the time is, I can't do this 14 more years. And that's what we kind of spoke about the other day.
Right. So we're putting some things in place,
Right.
based on my conversation with Ms. Courtney, to address those veteran teachers that are more seasoned, to see why they're leaving and specifically what we can do, if anything, to make them remain in the classroom, or at least remain Polk County Public Schools employees.
Thank you.
Just for the record, I'd love to have a similar meeting to that, to go through some of the things you're doing. So
Anytime.
Okay. Further questions about items R63 through R65? So we'll move on then to items R66 through R70. So we have a code of conduct, board policy updates, and the tentative budget. Those will require public hearings. So, Madam Superintendent, if it's okay, I'd like to ask Mr. Butler to come down and talk a little bit about the student code of conduct. Ms. Dodge to talk about our policy updates, and Mr. Prone to talk a little bit about the tentative budget, if that's okay, before we open it up to public comments.
That's fine.
Thank you. All right. And Mr. Bridges, you have an item on the agenda?
Yes, or just an advertisement for public hearing.
Okay. All right. That takes us to the back to our work session agenda. And the next item on the agenda is a referendum discussion. Mr. Townsend?
yeah, mostly this just relates to the mill question. And I know there's a complication related to the resolution, and it was my understanding someone would have some of the basics about what we'd have to do, about what the constraints are. I just want to run through what actually, say in a vacuum, we were to decide to do it tomorrow, what would we have to do today? You know, that's. So, anybody got that for me?
I can certainly address it, and I apologize, I was unaware that you wished for me to do that. But I can certainly do it. We have looked at the resolution recently. There's a paragraph in the resolution that you adopted for your sales tax that said that for a period of 3 years from the effective date of the sales tax, that you would not increase the millage beyond, on property beyond what was in effect at the time of the resolution. I believe that there was something similar in the original resolution, but that's what when the consultants put together your resolution, there is a provision in there that says that. So you made that representation in the resolution when you asked the county commission to put it on the ballot. There's been conversation about whether that is legally binding and that sort of thing, and what is a resolution. You know, ultimately, the item did go on the ballot and it was approved, but it is there, and there might be those who would look at it and say that you made that representation to the public when you asked the county commission to put it on the ballot. So it is there, and that provision that the board voted on and sent to the county commission says we won't do it for a period of 3 years from that date.
Would that include millage increases relative to something not done by referendum?
Yes, it says the board will not increase, because the only thing that would be done by referendum is that sales tax.
Okay.
Yeah, the board has authority to make that millage increase for operational, the operational increase is, I don't believe it fits under that referendum language.
So if the state said you can adjust your millage to what it was 10 years ago, it would be affected by that resolution.
In that resolution, you have made a representation that you would not do that. That's,
For 3 years.
For 3 years.
3 years.
From the time, this was my question, from the time of the vote
From the time
or
it
the
takes
time of
effect.
the voters' vote?
From the time it takes effect, which is January 1 of 19.
19.
Takes effect.
Right.
That's even
Yeah,
further.
that's what it says.
21.
That's the language that was in your
21,
resolution.
22.
When was that resolution voted?
That was in the general election.
No,
Well,
no.
the resolution was prior to the general election.
It wasn't you. It was
No,
dumb
it
people,
was-
it was dumb,
Thank you,
dumb,
Billy.
dumb people like me. Well, I mean, let's be honest. That wasn't gonna come out.
Right.
Like, the previous board was not gonna take that language out.
Well, and it was never a topic of conversation. It just never came out.
Well, I think what we probably, I'm guessing what happened was they took the language from the original
Right.
resolution.
Right,
Yes.
and just super.
And copied it.
And probably,
And it may be common
Yeah.
in those sorts of things, but there was a time that, you know, anytime the suggestion of increasing the operational millage would come up. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, would you, usually in that, because I wasn't here in that case, is that something you preview to advise on before they vote?
No, that is one, I certainly reviewed it before it went to the board for a vote, but it is not one that I drafted or had input into. You know, and you can certainly agree to that. Like I said, I think it's in the one that we did 15 years ago, and it's probably something that you commonly find where you, in order to induce the county commission to put it on the agenda, in order to induce the voters of the county to approve it, you're telling them, if you give this to us, we will forego any additional levy on your property value for a period of time. I think probably not.
Ms. Cunningham?
I gotta ask a question though. 3 years is an odd number. Why wouldn't it have been like for 2 years to the next
I have
election
no idea.
cycle? That 3 is kind of odd,
I don't know
because
whether
that forces us for another four
It was
years.
our resolution. We all could, I mean, I
know.
this
Yeah,
is
I have
Here
no
we
idea.
are.
a mountain of stupid.
It was never a topic of conversation, at least before the board.
I suspect though that if we had, after that was drafted, if we had wanted to take that out, it would have become a matter of public note and could have created some challenges. I think the key would have been to draft it somehow not to include that to start with. And I would have, I mean, I've never seen it.
Well, and in fairness, there was a lot of concern about whether it would pass at all. As it turned out, it passed
easily.
handily.
Yeah, exactly.
But there was a lot of concern about whether it would pass at all, and I suspect that when they were drafting it, they were looking at it and say, what can we do to maximize the chances of having the county put it on the ballot and the voters approve it. So, you know, and in an environment that is frequently not friendly towards new taxes, it's not a surprise that there would be language like that in a resolution.
Sweeney?
Well, I'm just curious as to what we need to do now in order to possibly look at it and not waste any more time. I mean, we have 3 years to do it right now, right?
Well,
We could buck the system.
yeah, I mean, I think that's,
Yeah.
the question is how legally binding is a resolution?
Well, and
Because I'll take
Yeah,
I'll take the political hit for
yeah,
it.
I've had that conversation with a variety of people, and it is, you know, it's certainly not it's not a law, it's not an ordinance. It is a representation that the board made. One way that I think it would be more supportable if you were in a position to come in and show that there has been a significant change, such that this is something that was not obviously necessary at that time, was now necessary.
The context that didn't exist.
Yes.
You know, at this point, you know, it'd be a question of what would that be? I mean, funding was tight last year, funding is tight this year. Has there been a significant change that would justify coming in and saying, you know,
I mean, what might be is if the law changes at the state level to allow us to do something with the local level. That's a very changed circumstance. I mean, I get the referendum part.
Sure.
The other part, if it becomes available to us, that's an entire change of circumstance. I mean, again, I'm willing to take the hit on the referendum part if it comes to it. It's just a question of could you defend it in court? I mean, if we.
Well, the question that I identify was, where would the cause of action be? Who would have standing to bring a cause of action? And that's not apparent.
No taxpayer would.
It doesn't mean that the taxpayer wouldn't try, but the question is, if the taxpayer brought it and a judge reviewed it, what would the effect of that resolution be? And I can tell you that in my research, I've not found an instance in Florida where there's been a case similar to this.
Okay.
I suspect it would just be a far more political tool for someone if they didn't want it to pass.
Probably.
But
that's on us.
And I'm going to agree with Mr. Townsend. I mean, when I looked at it, it made perfect sense to me. But I never saw it in the context of what if the state allowed us to implement prior millage rates. I never thought about it from that context. That never occurred to me. It was just the context of, and while the 3 years is an odd date, I agree with Ms. Cunningham. It was just in the context of this is typical language, I guess, is what I just assumed is what everyone did. So I think certainly if the state said, hey, you know, we're going to remove that millage rollback requirement, that's an extenuating circumstance that I wouldn't be willing to certainly.
Hold on.
Cunningham?
So, in these options that we've discovered, can you do some research, if that's the right word, to
Sure.
see if you could present us
How would you go about
with a
doing that?
few options? Could
Sure.
you please?
I would be
mean,
delighted.
what do y'all think? I mean, just so we have something to,
Yeah, the mechanics of if you
Yes, sir.
wanted to do it, how would you do it?
yes, sir.
I would be happy to.
Right, that's what I'd hoped for this.
I would be happy to.
But for the referendum as well. Like I'm talking about, like, right, for the, not just if they change the law, like for the referendum.
For both options.
For both the change in the law
Right.
and if we
And
wanted to pursue a referendum.
If you wanted to
do it,
pursue the
right.
referendum as well. It'd be interesting to know.
But here's another thought, Mr. Bridges. What if we pursued a referendum and it passed? would this, what would this, what would keep the state from saying, oh yeah, that's okay, but we're still gonna hold you to the same tax rate because we don't agree with tax increases?
Well, and I don't know the answer to that. To the extent it's authorized, I don't know how the state would keep you from doing it.
I mean, you take a risk anytime you go in front of a judge. I mean, the law is defined by what a judge says it is. I mean, but.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking is the state, you know, we have the referendum that passed. The state says, well, that's okay, we're not gonna push that back, but we're gonna push your prior millage rate back to adjust for the referendum.
Oh, well, they haven't done that for other counties. I mean, and I think that's the other part of this discussion is we're rapidly becoming resource non-competitive compared to other districts, like, and specifically inland districts. Like, if you go upward, Marion's done it. I think Alaska's done it. Lake has done it. Clay County just did it. I mean, those are not liberal counties. Those are conservative counties, and that's to have additional operating resources. So I mean, it's and not to mention the entire I-4 corridor almost.
I'll be happy to look at the mechanics of how boards do that. Obviously, we've done the sales tax referendum before. We know what the mechanics of that look like, and we'll just look at what the mechanics of an operational levy on property tax would be.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Reynolds?
I was just gonna ask if we could also get a little bit of history throughout the state of if there have been districts to bring a half-cent sales tax and a millage back to back. And I know overwhelmingly everything passed last year, but did any of those districts have something on the ballot 2 years before? Because kind of being out talking in the community, hinting that it might happen, the response has been overwhelmingly negative as far as voting for it, just because they just did a penny 6 months ago right now.
That's funny. I've had exactly the opposite
kind of.
reaction.
So I just would be curious what the
Me too.
what it would be, just what historically
What the
throughout
experience
the
of other
state
districts have been that may have both.
that have done both.
And to be clear, not all the district referendums passed by large margins. Some of them were pretty close. So
it'd be a tougher sell.
Yeah, and the work that we put in, I think, was very helpful.
And with the project list that we have that continue to grow
Exactly.
exponentially, and there's not enough money, I think you could go before people, because people are saying, oh, is that gonna get covered? I was like, no, we, so
Yeah.
I think you could, and particularly with the safety stuff.
Right.
Ms. Courtney?
Well, I have faith that not everybody's a money-hungry person, and that they know a bus driver, or they know a teacher, or they know a para that struggles to pay their bills, and, works 2 or 3 jobs, and, gives their heart and soul to their job. And I have faith that the Polk County residents would see that and not have a problem with it. Now, some of the greedy folks, probably are gonna have a problem with anything, so that's my point. Because we got greedy folks too.
Well, you do have to deal with, there's still a no new taxes contingent out there. They're there, and you deal with them. But once again, I think this situation came up because there was concern about amongst the committee whether the half-cent sales tax would be renewed. So they put language in there to be as persuasive as possible and made that representation for that purpose.
Mr. Townsend?
Yeah, I guess just to wrap up, if it's a political question versus a legal one, then that's something for us to decide amongst ourselves. And I guess we're not going to get a fully definitive answer on that. There will be a certain amount of risk involved, legally as well as politically.
Certainly.
Secondly, I think the civic community, the business community that I speak to, understands what it means to take $86 million a year out of your crucial civic infrastructure. They understand that you're eating away at an economic engine. They understand that the people who need to buy houses struggle to. I think it's if it becomes a referendum on teachers and paras and bus drivers, I feel pretty good about what will happen there. we have a long way to go to discuss this. Nothing's gonna happen today.
Okay. Any further comments or questions?
Well, I'll have a package for you at your next work session.
You could,
Talk
please,
about
that'd be
that.
great.
Ms. Worthington, could we add that as an agenda item to the next work session, please? And
may
Mr.
I-
Bridges will bring forward some additional information.
And may I ask, there's probably gonna be a lot of information, if we could get that, you said you'll bring it to the meeting, if we could get it, even if it's not the
Yes, ma'am.
requirement of the
We'll put
7 days, at least,
Yeah, we'll put it,
weekend
we'll
before
have the
to-
backup for you when it goes on the agenda.
oh, okay,
Yes,
all right,
ma'am.
great, sorry, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So just a couple of housekeeping things before we move on to board member comments. First of all, we need to set a date for the strategic planning retreat. We currently have October 1st and October 15th as the most desirable dates based on responses from the board members. So any preference? Let's start with the first. Does October 1st work? Does that work for everybody?
Yes, sir.
I think it does.
Okay. Courtney?
I'm good. This is my only job,
Okay.
Mr. Wilson.
Could you reach out to Ms. Fields, please, and see if that works for her? Okay, then we'll set it, if that works for Ms. Fields, then we'll set the date for the strategic planning retreat October 1st. Does that work for you, Madam Superintendent? Okay. Just remember that, please, for the board member staff evaluations are due today.
Yeah, I
So
forgot.
sometime
Whoops.
before 12 o'clock tonight.
As a dedicated teacher, mine is done and turned in.
Yes. Thank you for that. So if you can, please get those done as soon as possible.
Sure, where will the strategic planning meeting be?
October 1st. Oh,
Do we know?
at the health center?
Health center?
Can we do that?
Sure we can.
Can we do
Just
that?
Before we,
We'll just check, we need to check that.
Okay.
Yeah, I need to check
Yeah,
it, but
check it. I think you don't have anything.
we'll start with that
Okay.
location.
okay. John, whenever you get that, if you'll send it to me, we'll get it noticed.
And so are you okay with October 1st material? I probably should have
I
asked
would have
you.
loved October 15th, to be quite honest with you, but I will, we'll make it happen on October 1st, if that is the pleasure of the board and the board chair.
Well, we could do two sessions, one on the first.
Oh,
and the
no,
second.
no, no,
Can
no,
we have
no.
Mr. Wilson?
No, no, no,
Rush
no,
that.
no.
This gives us
We
a little
love you,
time to
bud.
start
It seems like the first is it.
I think that's what I heard.
Sooner the better.
Okay, and you'll check on the health center for us,
Yes,
sir? Thank you.
Oh, to have it
And I'll
at the
notify you as soon
thing
as I know.
Lakeland?
As soon as I
Yeah.
know that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Think of it.
So I want to talk a little bit about impact fees. There, as you know, there was an article in the paper, and I've had a few discussions. Zusher and I have had a few discussions with Mr. Lindsay at the Board of County Commissioners, some of the folks over there, and just in very broad-based terms, what they're talking about at this point in time is full impact fees. There was a study that was commissioned, and they're talking about full impact fees phased in over a period of time. I think they said 3 years. Was that correct, Ms. Usher?
I think so.
And
Right.
with an additional opportunity for the builders to build into, to allow buyers, for example, to pay for the impact fees over a period of time for their tax bill. So it would be a type of financing arrangement where if they didn't want to pay up front, they could pay over a period of time for the tax bill with interest. So that's what they are bringing forward. And the question is, would we like to have a workshop? Would we like for someone to come in and talk to us? And okay, I think part of the concern is that they want to do that pretty quickly. So it may require a special meeting. Are we okay with that? Would you like us to set that up?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll reach out to Mr. Lindsay.
The earlier in the morning, the better for me, if
Morning?
there's an option,
Okay.
yeah, like 8:30. sorry.
Lori Cunningham.
I know, I'm sorry, if you could,
I was gonna kind of say
the opposite.
opposite of that. If we do it in the evening, it gives people a chance to come. I
Well, I
mean, we
can do
don't, we don't,
early morning or after like 6, either way, but
yeah, I mean, I'll
Middle of the
do whatever,
days,
but,
nice
but,
afternoon.
but like, I mean, this is a pretty significant
I know.
issue.
I know.
We don't have to allow public comment on it. We can say we're gonna have it, but allow people to watch it. Yeah, right.
Now,
what'd she say?
and just to be clear, so what I'm hearing is sometime in the afternoon if possible. If they will do it after 6, is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, I would prefer,
Okay.
I would prefer a night. workshop.
And to be clear, the Board of County Commissioners makes a decision. We simply make a recommendation to them. But I think our recommendation will carry a lot of weight. Yes, ma'am.
But let me ask this, I understand phasing it in, but what about the money that's been accrued and is sitting in an account that we haven't gotten? Are we going to get that released and starting from a certain date forward, we would receive it phased in over 3 years? I'm trying to understand, or maybe the workshop will clear that up.
There should,
right?
The new sales tax becomes effective next year.
Okay.
And the draft report shows, I mean, for residential, single family it was 10,000.
Yes.
In the past one, and they adopted it at 50%.
Yes.
This new study shows like 12,600.
Yes.
So even if they have to pay half up front, when they come in for the SEO, they'll be paying 6,000, which is more than what we're getting.
Currently.
And then they would let the other 6,000 go with the
Go with the 3-year plan.
or whatever. But
No?
the thing is, no.
I think the percentage goes from 50 to 70 to 90. Over a period of time, the percentage goes up to 100.
Up to 100, so we don't
We're
get
doing
the
two things here, though, Mike. It's confusing.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
The 6,000. Ms. Cunningham, they can pay their 12,000 up front,
And be done.
12,600.
Right.
Don't when they come through, or they can put it in their taxes. But when they come to implement in January, they will not implement everything at 12,000. They will phase that amount in over 3 years.
So then what are they doing with the amount that they're collecting? If
Right
they're only
now?
giving us the 6, where's the other 6 going?
we don't get that. They're going to phase it in over a period of time.
Right, they will phase
my
in
question-
to get to the full amount.
But they're not keeping it.
No,
No, they'll phase it in
they're
to
not
get.
charging it.
And a lot of districts do that, it said, because it'll be a significant to go from 5,000 to 12,000 to the builders. So they'll phase in the 12,000, starting with half at 6,000.
I see.
Yeah,
Got
so
it.
it's actually two
Got
pieces.
it.
There's a phase in over time. And then there's also, if the builders wish, they can pay for it up front if they feel like they can sell the house.
I understand.
Or instead, they can assign it
Do
to
that.
the real estate tax.
I understand, okay.
And charge interest on it.
On it
Which
and all that.
I think, in talking to Mr. Prone, is
Yeah.
desirable because it
Sure.
provides us with a pretty sustainable
You bet.
revenue stream.
Revenue stream.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll see if I can set that up with Mr. Lindsay, and I'll let you know, Susan. Okay. And the only other thing I have, and I think, oh yeah, no, I want to mention this. We had talked about broadcasting the roundtable meetings as well as public comments. And so moving forward, as directed by the board, we're going to be doing that. We're going to broadcast both the roundtable meetings as well as public comments. So I'll mention that this evening and make sure folks understand that they need to be careful if they're mentioning student names and identifying individuals. As you all know, I typically ask that they not focus on individuals, that they say focus on issues anyway, but I'll reemphasize that, and hopefully we'll stay away. That won't be an issue for us. So beginning this evening, we'll be broadcasting the comments as directed by the board. Okay? All right, and that's all I have. Board member comments. Ms. Miller?
I was thumbs upping John Hill, but I can. We were having our own dates. I had a couple of things, but I don't. Okay.
Would you prefer not to start first?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I've been working with Wes on the statute that required the advertisement of the scholarship. What's it called, Wes?
Family Empowerment Scholarship.
The Empowerment Scholarship. I received a lot of feedback from people who received that phone call, and email that were employed by the school district. Some of them teachers at Title I schools who took offense to the fact that we are promoting and advertising a scholarship / voucher to private schools, especially to their families, believing that they want the district to support what they're doing. So I explained in statute that we had to do that, but I did question the manner that we did it. It looks like it went out in robocalls, emails, press releases. I think in comparing to what other districts did, we exceeded probably what the minimum requirement was for that. And I want our staff, and especially our teachers, to understand that even though, yes, there was a requirement to let families know about that, we no longer take the data, which affects our Title I, it affects our eligibility as long as other things. We no longer collect data on free and reduced lunch like we used to do per application, because we started taking part of that federal Everyone Eats Free program. And not collecting that data kind of impacts several things, and this happened to be one of them, because they were, I guess, originally supposed to target those families of the free and reduced lunch. So the two things I have is, one, yes, that state statute. Personally, I think we're kind of liable for that, because if you go on our website and you received a phone call and you received a robocall and you received an email that said, hey, you're eligible for this scholarship, you take it and go to some private school that has no oversight, and we've had some here that have had some really detrimental things happen, and something awful happens to your child, I'm a little concerned with the liability that we're the one that promoted it to the student. I know that's a state statute, but I think we need to be aware of that, and the public needs to be aware that it's something that we did not come up with. I do think we went over the minimum requirement to get that message out, but our parents and families need to know they need to vet all of those opportunities, and especially with the scholarships that target low socioeconomic areas to bring in students. So that was one thing I wanted to cover, and I did, and eventually I would like to get, I know Ms. Longa is here, I would like to get what we do, what we utilize to collect the data on the low socioeconomic areas, or the free and reduced lunch, what we used to previously collect on. If there's something we use specifically to find that, to generate that data. Can you send that, what that is? And then I don't know, as a district, if we can choose to collect some kind of data for ourselves to keep. Because if it's a big net that we're casting, I'm afraid it's going further than it needs to.
Do you want me to clarify now?
Sure.
So it is true, we do not any longer collect free and reduced lunch forms. We are district-wide community eligibility provision, correct? However, for CEP, just to make it easier to say, we still track the students that are free or reduced in poverty, right, through direct certification. So we've replaced one set of codes with another set of codes for direct certification. So we still have a code for a student showing that they are either free or reduced lunch, even though we're no longer doing that form.
How do we determine that through what the code? How is that
So
determined?
the agencies such as PAMP or any of our public assistance agencies and programs, as soon as the family, the parent, the grandparent, whoever is the caretaker in that family for that student, right, enrolls in that program, that public assistance program, then it's an automatic thing in the system that gets supplied to us, and then that code gets applied. So we still can tell per student whether they are free or reduced lunch, and that would have been the code that was used to determine who would get this message. Now, I do want to clarify that's not in my office, I just happen to know that,
Okay.
because I live and breathe by it for Title I.
Right.
Because those identifications, like you correctly stated, affect eligibility for Title I.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know how correct that data is, because people were calling me absolutely did not qualify for that scholarship. And the problem that I see with that new data collection process is like our center schools, whose the diversity there and the demographic there does not change year to year, has slowly lost Title I, one at a time. So I'm not sure how accurate that data is that they're now using to collect. But I just want us to be aware that we are promoting the scholarship for families to take and use in private settings that have no oversight. And that needs to be something we're all aware of, so when we get the phone calls back when they're going to return to public setting, that it's not, that's not something that we may have done if it was left to us to decide to do it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Ms. Cunningham?
Yes, I know I said something quickly, but I know everybody's seen this because it went out, and I got a lot of questions about it, and I think the superintendent has said, because I don't know the answers obviously to it, that they should call at the district office. Can you give me a good number? What are they?
Ms. Porteous?
What's the number?
The contact number for them, if they
For
have
the-
questions.
Because there's so many people saying,
Oh,
hey, what if you
863.
teach this class or that class, or I have no clue. What is it, 863?
863-534.
Yes, ma'am.
0737, or 81, 0781. Sorry.
0781.
The extension into that office is extension 552.
552. Okay, and can you kind of, I got the basic information. So who are we targeting? Any teacher, I'm still confused. Can someone give us just a quick, I know we got to go, but just a quick overview of who's eligible? I mean, I read it all, but the stuff on social media is just going rampant. If I'm at school X, but I want to teach at Y, but Y doesn't have a position open for what I teach, do I still fill out the form? Do I only go where there's a vacancy that exactly meets my criteria?
So on the back
Help.
end, what we're doing
Yes.
is we're looking at all of those teachers that are unsat and needs improvement, especially in the schools that are listed in Opportunity 1. If they're listed in there, if it's an unsat teacher by state VAM, we have to take them out. That's what this data said, specifically for McLaughlin, Griffin, and Philip O'Brien. So that is going to create some vacancies there.
That may not be on
That
the
may
list
not-
now.
correct.
So I should tell people who might be
Please fill out
interested,
the form.
fill out that form and just see
Yes.
where it leads.
Mhm.
Okay,
Please fill out the
that's
form.
what I needed to hear.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Reynolds?
My only thing was, just in the future, when you send those out, if you could send us a Q&A form of the basic, these are the questions we're anticipating, this is what which I think there is even on the website, a couple Q&A things, so that when people contact us, we can say, here's the Q&A form, any further questions, call this number. That would be super helpful. I think it got posted before we got the ad, because I had gotten a couple comments on it before I saw the email, so it just before it goes out on social media, we could have that Q&A, that'd be helpful. Thank you. That's
That's
my
it?
only thing.
Well,
Yes, sir.
So, is this the same program? Like they passed an adjustment to best and brightest. Like, is this a bonus program completely distinct from that, or is
It's
it
completely
incorporated?
distinct, yes.
Okay, so we don't have the distribution of how the best and brightest revision is going to go yet.
Correct, no.
Is that because we don't have it, or because they have it? Like, what's the timeline on that?
I know we know the basic framework, and Jason, can you correct me if I'm wrong. However, usually we get that in December-ish.
Well, the state changed the Best and Brightest program this year. It went away from the ACT, SAT.
Right.
And in fact, the state really hasn't given us many details yet. I think the chancellor just sent an email out a couple of days ago. So I'm assuming within the next month, we will have kind of a concrete program, but at this point, we still have a lot of unanswered questions to be able to give staff.
Very specific answers.
Is there any flexibility built in it to the extent you know? I mean, like, do we get to make a choice based on how wide it goes, or is it completely prescribed?
The best and brightest.
With best and
Yeah,
brightest.
the best. I mean,
It is prescribed,
Yeah.
but then there's a certain option 3, so what is called leftover funds, that we are working with PEA in
Okay.
terms of deciding what happens with those
Okay.
leftover funds.
Okay, but-
Who gets them, how are they allocated, what criteria are attached to those funds.
But this bonus program is distinct from that. It's part of turnaround funding.
This is specifically a part of turnaround, correct, and so it was presented to you all in June 18th, I think, at that previous board meeting. Mrs. Pat Barnes talked about it, and so all of the stipends are basically from that turnaround schools program.
With the
Specifically,
PISA.
it's for DNF schools.
Okay.
I had a quick question on that subject. I got calls from teachers upset about this program, and I'm trying to explain it to them, and they keep saying what the board is doing to us, what the district is doing to us. So I think the messaging in that, I would like the next time something like that is rolled out to them, that it's kind of where it came from a little bit, because they thought it was, many teachers, I got the phone calls as they walked into Sunday school on Sunday morning, was because they had thought that we had designed that plan for them. And it was a lot of explaining that, no, this is where it came from. So I think if we could work on the messaging of that, that would help the stakeholder management.
So number 9 in the FAQ says, why are these bonuses at the selected schools? The answer is new Florida laws and the Florida Department of Education determine which schools are eligible for the bonuses. I mean, I tried to be as much.
I get it,
tried
but when
to anticipate all the questions we could, because we didn't want you all to take the hit for that.
As the teachers see that big $21,000,
I'm gonna have
I don't know that they read all the way down.
I'm gonna make a standing request. Anytime we're gonna announce publicly a bonus program or a compensation program, that before we announce that the way we introduce it is to have a public meeting in which we invite teachers to come and understand it, ask questions directly, rather than sending it out by email. Everybody gets hundreds of emails. They get lots of things to read. I think engaging with people up front, saving a little bit of time on the front end, saves a lot of headache on the back end. If instead of sending it out Sunday morning, we had said, hey, we're going to have a meeting Monday evening to describe this new bonus program, where it's coming from and why. Maybe 10 people show up, maybe 100 people show up. Either way, you can say, hey, look, we invited our people to come and engage with this program, and that's sort of a basic thing. It's like it's a way to make it feel less impersonal, and less sort of boom, on top of you. Also, if something like that is presented, we are your front line in terms of dealing with the public, more so even than PR is, because when people, they call us individually, they equip us. I mean, it's one thing to present as part of I think this was part of an overall turnaround presentation, wasn't that? I don't remember but give us the tools to help to be able to make the case for you. That I think is an example of how stakeholder management should work, and it wouldn't have cost us anything except the meeting and a little bit of discussion.
Ms. Whitney?
Well, that was on my list too. So, what I got from all the comments to me was it just creates dissension, and we're all fighting over the same dang dollar, and the dollar needs to be like $100, not $1. So, the dissension, out there, and they're afraid that they're going to lose some of their good teachers out of some schools, because who can blame them? They're going to go for the money, kind of thing. And the other concern I kept hearing was that the VAM is still a scam. It's still there over the SAO, even all the other stuff. I had to do an SAO myself, and and all of a sudden the VAM rears its nasty head again. There it is, Arr, VAM scam. So I wanted to throw that out there about that topic.
So because these are state funds, let me
Yeah,
just
I know.
because these are state funds, the state has selected or decided on that measure.
Right.
In terms of providing the largest bonus of $15,000 to highly effective teachers. That is not something that we can negotiate.
I know.
We can't, unfortunately, we don't have Edie's
I get it.
parameters to change that.
Okay. The one comment I would like, when the state board was here, the commissioner did say it was actually lower amount of money, and there is certain criteria that we have to adhere to. It's VAM, it's DNF schools, that we had to adhere to for these dollars, and they increased it. on the 17th of July. He increased the dollars for that. The plan was actually, when we were at the turnaround conference, that plan has to go back to the state board. And that plan, at that time, we were actually had sent our draft in, and they were wanting our plan. So they pretty much told us what schools it is and how are you utilizing these dollars. So that's why it pushed out on that weekend, because we were pushing it out to the teachers, because we had our timeline with DOE at that time. Things have changed the way they're doing the dollars when they're doing the incentives, and they were very clear. These are for incentives for teachers. You cannot go out and use them for anything else. They were very clear on that.
Yeah, and I can explain that part in what you said, Tedra, as well. But it is still, the general feeling is the dissension, you know, fighting over $1 instead of $100. And, you know, and then that ban, which is crazy in itself.
In addition, we did try to provide some funds to those teachers that didn't have band. So
Right.
last year in negotiating with Mary Ann,
Right.
or Ms.
I wanted you to
Capizzo,
bring that
sorry.
up. Good.
But last year negotiating with her, she brought up to me, Tedra, is there a way for us to at least give those teachers that have SAO or that don't have a band some money? What can we do for those teachers?
Right.
Because they are at the schools as well, doing a heavy lift as well. So how can we do that? As a result of that conversation with her last year, then in planning all of this, I asked Maria, is there a way that we can at least include those teachers? How can we do it? How much will it be? So we were able to come up with a formula and the calculation that has been circulated. So that's why in a portion of even Opportunity 1, and I think Opportunity 3, if I'm not mistaken, there says, you know, for those people that have completed an SAO or non-BAM teachers, or those that are new to the district, you will receive an effective score, and therefore you will get a portion of that money. We try to be very thoughtful about it because we don't want to necessarily create dissension, especially within the building, of someone that's getting $15,000 and then someone that's only getting $100.
Agreed. Yeah, I get you.
Ms. Reynolds?
I had two things. First, this list is much more extensive than it's been in the past. They changed the requirements for these schools, is that correct? Where it's not just it was the top 5 middle schools a few years ago, but it's also the ones that are on the verge of
So they
becoming
actually
that?
decided the list for us and provided that information to us the day after, I think, or shortly thereafter, so shortly around the same time as the state board meeting.
Because these are not all of the schools that are the double Ds, correct? This is they may, you know, we want to catch them before they become that.
Correct.
But I also just wanted to ask, I think I forgot my second question. All right, come back to me because
Mr. Townsend?
Yeah, I just, my point, I don't have any concern with the plan. I mean, it is what it is. I think you guys put a lot of time and effort into constructing it. It's what the state rules are. What I'm again trying to suggest is that, you know, Superintendent Bird is really, really good in the video format. Like, and if she does a video and says, here's this bonus program that the state, that we've been going back and forth on, we're gonna have a meeting in 3 days, or here's a call center number, we're doing a call center for buses. That's what I'm talking about. Like, just those couple of little things change the dynamic of everything. And you know, that's getting back to the chief of staff role. That's what I hope the chief of staff role will be thinking about. Those kinds of things. And if you're presenting something to us, say, hey guys, we're gonna roll this out, and people may or may not like it. Here's, we think, the best arguments for you guys to be armed with to go talk to the public on our behalf. It's very hard to collaborate with you if we don't feel fully equipped to collaborate. So I'm just help me help you. That's all.
Ms. Reynolds?
kind of to go off of what Billy's saying, I think if you're in a video announcing it, that it doesn't even necessarily need a meeting. If you're the one presenting it to the public,
Fair enough.
Right.
then I know you want to be in the classrooms with the students, but you really are a great voice that we should be using as often as we can. My question before, and this is a windy question, is there something that we can do legislatively to get it changed where this is not, they're using something other than the VAM score. I don't know what that would look like, or
We had it
is,
as part of our platform
Okay.
to not make the BAM score able to be used in this manner.
okay,
So,
so just continuing
it
to
would
push
be a
that.
continuation of, and you know, last year we had a lot of districts on board. We had support from other
Right.
districts. But we have a commissioner of education who deeply believes in BAM. So it's
Gotcha.
gonna, it will continue to be a heavy lift.
And Mrs. Reynolds, just to address something that you said, actually the schools that are in Opportunity 2 are schools that were previously in turnaround that are not currently in turnaround.
They made a
And the
choice.
state has decided to continue to support them to ensure that they don't slip backwards. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear and on the record.
Okay, and I may have missed it in the
Yeah, there's a list.
facts and questions. Does it say what each of the opportunities are? Like what that category means in the facts and questions?
I'll
What opportunity 1 schools are, what opportunity, because if not, I think that would be very helpful for
Okay.
the public as well as to show that we're still supporting these schools that were in turnaround and now they're coming out of turnaround, but we're not pulling out all the resources, if that makes sense. It may be in there and I may have missed it.
The last thing I'd like to share that I've shared with PEA is that, from what I've heard, that the state actually may increase the amount from, in unison 20, from 15,000 to 20,000. So that is tentative. When we hear more information about that, we will certainly let you all know, so you can brace yourselves for even more questions.
In the turnaround. No, this was in the turnaround. Schools.
Now that you have the number.
I think Ms. Fortney, have some comments?
Can I change the subject now?
You can.
Okay. Okay. Kelly De La Cruz, who came through our charter and then took her charter, I met with her. Of course, I was friends with her ahead of time, but she came down and luckily I caught Wendy Dodge in the hallway so I could get some professional help. But I did meet with her. She has reached out to Senator Stargell, Jeff Woods, the consortium lawyer for charters, Representative Sullivan plans to meet with Senator Diaz about a change in the application lottery tool that we are allowed to use for demographics. Are anybody aware of that? Okay. All right. Dr. Ace, can I forward you her email?
Absolutely.
She explains it very, very well.
Yes, ma'am.
But I wanted to get it out on a work session, so in case she wanted to come and speak about it, because I believe she has validity in her thing. And I know y'all hate me to keep saying this, but we are still using Roundup on our campuses around our kids. And as a science teacher, I can't, there's 17 countries that have some kind of ban on it, you know. I saw a guy out spraying a school and he didn't even have a mask on and had a shirt wrapped around his face so he didn't have to breathe it. You know, I just wish we would maybe be bold and set some kind of, I mean, you can use vinegar. Vinegar kills weeds, you know, whatever. But Roundup is poison and it's deadly, and I can't believe that we use it around our kids. Also had somebody reach out, and I don't know how often this happens. You know, you have direct deposit to your banks, and in the summer, and I guess they had to change banks, and their direct deposit, they couldn't even get a check cut from us. That's again optics. Poor PR, I guess. You know, those are our teachers that could not get a simple task like a check written for their holdback.
Can you forward that to us, please?
I sure can, Tegra. And speaking on checks, special activities, what's the turnaround on that? Because I got folks waiting 2 months for like tutoring after school, and just trying to put it all out there. You know, I'm just telling you what the folks tell me.
So this Fortney on that one,
Yep.
again, for us, the specific school, because some of that, we work together in different departments. So,
Okay.
but we do need to know the specific school, and I do know there's some situations where there's.
Something about had to go to the area superintendent.
I worked on that, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I worked on that
Okay.
particular one.
Yeah,
I had
you
a
just send them
discussion with Mr.
individually.
Jerome.
Okay, well, I wanted to bring it
And-
up
Yeah.
because
Yes,
if it
ma'am.
happens one place, it
I'm
can-
aware of that particular school and that
Okay,
instance and that
thank you,
concern,
Mr.
so-
Hill. Speaking of schools, our health clinic, which I love so much, Mr. Tazza brought it up earlier. I would love to find out what it takes to name the health clinic over here after Marianne Capizello, since she was instrumental in doing that. So much so that I actually found, which is challenging sometimes, the naming of school facilities and memorials, the actual policy for it. Very proud of that, thank you. And so I'd like to throw that out there. And speaking of naming stuff, the city of Davenport's mayor has reached out about the naming of the new schools. Has he also sent that to you, Ms. Usher?
Yes, Ms. Fortin, we have a committee form.
Committee, yeah.
Okay, just check it, just check it,
Yeah.
because mind reading is not my thing. Let's see.
Luckily, not mine either.
Do we need to put that, Chair, do we need to have, I mean, if you want to suggest that with the policy, do we need to add that to the work session?
Yes,
To discuss?
Okay.
can we do that, Mr. Wilson? Naming of the clinic?
For the naming.
Naming of the clinic.
Where does
Yes,
that go?
for the next work session.
That has
I'm
to
trying
be
to help her
renaming.
with that.
Let me,
I don't know how it works.
that probably will have to come from the superintendent. I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
Yeah, that
Okay.
normally
Can I see the,
Because if
Sure.
it's not a school,
site.
it's not a PTA to do it.
See, I did that one, I did that one. Did that one,
What's her name?
Okay, so this is a new
Yes.
thing, and I don't know how this works, and maybe it's about money and titling it different and where funding comes from and et cetera, but I was down at Bartow Middle School this morning to give them a little pep talk and for their training, and some of the teachers in there were getting paid and some were not. And the reason I was told was that they were not at that school last year, so their start date wasn't until August 5th. Yet they were sitting by somebody making, adult rate, I guess, right next to them. But they were all Polk County employees last year.
So generally, when we do the switch of schools, that doesn't start until the
August
first teacher
5th.
contract day.
Right.
I'm not sure why they won't be able to get paid. They should likely do some sort of special activity form for them, and then they will be able to get some sort of pay. That's what
Oh.
I'm guessing.
So, what, Dr.?
And it depends on where they were previously.
I would get with them individually,
Very middle?
names and.
Okay, I just thought that odd, because
ma'am.
that's the kind of stuff that drives teachers crazy.
Drives us the same way.
Yes, sir. I mean, you're sitting by somebody like, oh, you're making $18 an hour, and they're like, well, I'm here on my own time. Well, how come? Well, there you go. Right?
We're on it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Next, I'm a big proponent of how we're involved with the census taking, because we'll have to teach those kids in 10 years if they're not counted as soon as they're born. And I was wondering who I could reach out to. I have a really good PowerPoint that I got at Florida School Board Association when I did a little training on the census. Would that be you, Miss Usher, I'm guessing?
Could be Rachel too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was guessing.
No, not me.
Anybody to me.
I have a meeting with
Yeah,
a representative from the census coming up.
Oh, I'll just forward you the little PowerPoint.
Alrighty.
Awesome. And then I'm reaching out for my guidance counselors again. I have some that just feel like an 11-month contract would help them get their work done, especially because of the inequity from one school to another. One school has 300 kids with one guidance counselor, one has 600 kids with one guidance counselor. At least give them an option maybe of an 11-month schedule. I don't know. That would help them, and of course I'm gonna keep fighting for my fire medical guy down there to be on some sort of supplement at Bartow High School, Kenny Miles. And then we got a letter from Congressman Soto about our ROTC instructors also not on 11-month contracts, which I thought was interesting. And then of course I can just kind of keep reaching out about behavior and pay and insurance and all that kind of good stuff. Dr. Psyche, I've got this suicide prevention thing I'd like to give you, if that's okay, that I picked up at a
Yes, ma'am.
thing. And then I have one more comment and I will shut up. I know you're happy. But pass this to Mr. Bridges because I think the Florida School Board Association already did your research. I brought it to talk about that millage rate, and I think it's already done for you there.
Oh, wonderful.
You're welcome. Thank you for
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Forney.
listening.
Absolutely. Further board comments?
I have a couple of questions. Is there gonna, do you have an update on what the deal is with McLaughlin with the external operator? Has the state told you who's acceptable, who isn't?
So the state did approve our turnaround plan for an external operator. We have interviewed one company and we have another one tomorrow we're interviewing. I was in conversation with them on yesterday as they want to know the selection and to let them know that we are interviewing another company. They actually vetted the external operator, so they kind of have told us who are some of the ones that they will approve. And we are making sure we go through those. And so we should be bringing the external operator to you soon because we have to get that back to them for their meeting within a couple of weeks.
So the external operators that we're interviewing are DOE vetted?
They've been
Okay.
vetted. Yes, they have been.
I'm sure everybody got the same email I got.
Yes.
The, is Lake Wales Charter vetted?
No.
Do you have any sense that they are?
I talked, we asked the question and I sent that letter to DOE. They talked to them, they said they were not, according to the Vice Chancellor, yesterday's conversation, she said they were not interested in the external operator. They were interested in a charter system, that school going to a charter system, but they are not vetted as an external operator. To answer that question, they're not.
Okay, so we can't zone them and have them be the external operator.
No, sir.
Okay, that is,
No, sir.
that's a clarification I wanted. All right.
Okay.
Totally switching gears. Just very briefly, I did a sort of a study of my own on comparing magnet school school grade scores to charter school grade scores, and I think there's a really interesting story there and a good one for the district. The overall response is that, I mean, the overall picture is that the charter schools in Polk County are very, very, very white, and the charter school of the magnet schools that we run are considerably less so. They're very integrated, much more representative of Polk County's diversity as a whole, and the performance is at worst interchangeable and in many cases better. I think when you compare self-selected enrollments to each other, yeah, I think our schools and their, we have a very good story to tell, and I wanted to congratulate our magnet school staff on that. There are, of course, same problems I've talked about before. We had transportation and like, I mean, the whole reason we're dealing with Phil O'Brien right now is what we did to them to create the company, or to create code. I mean, that is the downside of our own magnet schools. So I just wanted to throw that out, and if you get a chance to read that, it's a really interesting comparison, I think. It also kind of talks about how school grades are misleading compared to the actual school grade score, which is much more, I mean, at least much more represents what the state says it's supposed to be doing. My question is, as I was doing this, I was trying to find all the demographic data for the schools, and we used to be able to, I think, if I punched in a school's name on our website, no matter what kind of school it was, I would get the enrollment stats. How many kids are enrolled, what the breakdown of Black, white, Hispanic children is. I couldn't find that anywhere, not at the DOE level, because they do it by like white and non-white, I think now, and so I had to use greatschools.com, which I think was probably pulling from somewhat dated data. Does there exist somewhere a Black, white, Hispanic, Asian breakdown of all of our schools by enrollment?
So, Mr. Johnson, I can't, I have to defer to Ms. Pleasant about the website piece, but if you go on EdStats, I could actually show you the piece on there.
Okay.
It'll show the demographics for each one of our schools, and the racial breakdown is actually in there.
Okay.
So I'd be glad to. Now, I agree with you. The DOE website is not as friendly as it used to be for accessing some of that, and some of that is changing. But EdStats is up to date as of last year. It gives you some really good data on it. So I'll be glad to show where we go to do that.
Okay.
Where's EdStats on what?
It's on the DOE website.
DOE, thank you, thank you.
It's an integrated reporting piece.
Are we gonna add that? I mean, it was, used to be No Child Left Behind had that, was that information that you could get directly on our website? Is that gonna be added? Do we have that? Is that gonna be available for people?
I mean, at the very least, could we link to EdStats at the very least? I mean, to start with.
I don't think you can do
Again,
it
I
right
don't know where Vice President is with the website pieces, but I'll tell you, EdStat is not the friendliest piece to do. So we could look at some of those pieces and see if we wanted to put those links back on there.
Okay.
But I'll be glad to share that with you. And it has all of the public schools.
Okay.
By counties.
What about the Florida Chamber website that the guy gave us that presentation at the Florida School Board Association?
It does.
Didn't that have all that?
Not down to the school level. It didn't. I mean, well, they're pulling from DOE anyway. They don't have their own numbers.
That was DEO, Department of Economic Opportunity.
That's it, yeah. Thank you. I had it printed down. I just had one other thing because I forgot. The astronaut was at the Girl Scout thing that Marissa Green was there as well. It was really cool. And, you know, she came and did her presentation about the STEM badges and stuff like that at our roundtable, which followed right in with our professors. And so there's women astronauts. Science is everywhere. Just wanted to put that out there. It is everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Any further comments from the board members? Okay, Madam Superintendent, did you have anything you needed to discuss?
No.
All right, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
So.